Good morning, everybody. We have another episode of NomadLand. It's the first time we're actually recording in the morning, so we're drinking coffee instead of whiskey. And this episode, we got Cash on the set.
I'm here.
Co-host Yaya.
What up?
What do we got today?
Today we have a special guest, a
Very
famous
special.
gift. That's what we do. And he's a professional stand-up comedian. You've seen him on TV, on Comedy Central. He's been on Leno, on Conan. He's got 5 comedy albums. He's hosted the Playboy Morning Show for about 200 episodes with a beautiful co-host. A lot more beautiful than my co-host. He's got over 200,000 listens on Pandora. A very successful podcast called Timesuck, and we're honored to have him here today, especially for us being a new podcast. To have somebody in that caliber means a lot. But when I was doing research on you, I noticed that you've even accepted invitations to do a private gig on a farm, roasting farmers that have no arms.
Oh my God, that was the weirdest gig. That was the
So
weirdest
that doesn't
gig.
make us
That's-
feel
that was
that
great.
special,
Yeah,
but we
that
still
was-
appreciate you coming here.
That was like, oh man, that was like
Thank you,
15
Dan.
years ago. I thought I was gonna
So
get
that really
murdered.
happened.
I thought
Okay.
I was gonna get killed that gig. That was the weirdest gig. It was that guy he lives in the Bay Area, I think now, and he still hits me up for gigs, and I just kind of like make up excuses all the time not to do it. But
So
you know,
it is a true story.
What
True
happened?
story.
Can you
Did it
tell
happen?
that story?
Yeah. When you start off, you know, like or I started off when I was 23, I guess, and you know, initially I was just so hungry to like take any gig.
Yeah.
Like anybody was like, "Well, you'll pay me to do this? Oh, awesome, okay." And then there's this whole in the Northwest. These corporate gigs used to be really big when I started. And I didn't really do many, but I'd hear about guys doing them. Like instead of a club, somebody just hires you to do their event.
Yeah.
So this guy, he sees me at a club in Seattle, and he wants me to do what did he call it? It was like a high school football coaches retreat. I think is how he sold it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, well maybe it'll be a bunch of like it wasn't much looking back. It was just like a couple $100.
Right.
Yeah.
And he gave me, this is like pre GPS, so he just gives me the address, and I'm thinking like it's around Seattle, so I'm thinking it's somewhat kind of urban, maybe a little bit.
Yeah.
and I follow this like MapQuest or whatever.
Yeah, print it off Yahoo Maps.
Print it off, yeah. And I
Yeah.
just keep getting farther and farther out in like the sticks. I'm like, oh, this is a little weird. And then I get far enough where I get nervous, like I have no cell reception. So I'm like, oh man, and it's like dark, and I go, and it's just like a farm,
Was it nighttime?
nighttime,
Oh, wow.
and then just
shit.
like this barn. And it's like I walk. It looked like it could be in like a scene in Saw or something. Like where I'm gonna get in there and the doors are gonna lock and they're like, you know, you've been given a choice. You know, it's like God. And so I go in this place and it's just like it's like 6 dudes.
Holy
It's like
shit.
there's like there's not like a big group. It's like
Yeah.
6 dudes, dirt floor in a barn.
Yeah.
Like a
That's
Radio
funny.
Shack mic in the corner, like the one that hooks directly into the
Yeah,
speaker.
yeah.
The Fisher Price
The
one.
Fisher Price one, and then they want me to do a roast. And the guy who brought me in takes me aside, and one of his buddies was like had a birth defect where he had no, like most of his arm, kind of like he had a little bit past the elbow on one side.
It's gone.
It's gone. And then this guy that brought me in, he's like, "Yeah, man, just make fun of that." And I'm like, I don't think that's a good idea. And I'm like, no, we joke about it all the time. I'm like, yeah, but you know him.
You know him. Yeah.
Like, I'm just like, that's going to be horrible. I just go in a barn full of 6 dudes. I'm like, what's up, pirate? What's up, man? Just like mocking somebody for a disability. I'm
Yeah.
like, this is going to go. So
Yeah,
I
it's not
just,
gonna go good.
I just tried to like, it was not a good show. I did not make fun of that guy. I tried to do my material, which was so weird. And
Like
then
awkward, yeah.
awkward and left as quick as possible.
You made it out of
That's
there
fun.
alive.
I made it
bro.
out alive. I made
Yeah.
that was a gig where I'm like, I don't even care if the check clears. I'm just glad to have this behind me.
Was the money
Yeah.
good for its time?
No,
I don't-
it was like $150. It was
Okay.
something. But at the time, it's like I was, you know, sleeping on couches when I do gigs, you know, taking the MC spots
Yeah.
just to start the show, and so to get anything felt good at the time.
Yeah, for sure.
Well,
The way you like you basically make fun of people in the crowd.
Yeah,
you
yeah.
just brought it up. I mean, is that something you got more comfortable with over time, or is that come
Yeah,
naturally?
You know, it's funny. It's like people have their different styles. I'm definitely more of like I like to present my kind of stories or thoughts, and so I try not to go into the crowd too much. You know, it's more of like to diffuse things. If someone's
Sure.
being a little bit rambunctious or whatever, it's like I'll do it, you know, because it's necessary to get the show back on track. But I don't like to open up that door. Like some comics like to like have that, you know, kind of
The crowd work.
yeah, the crowd work,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
I've never been as I can do it if I want, but I look at it like, you know, I've worked for several years now, many years on these thoughts, and I'm putting these things together.
So it's a little hacky to you to do that?
Not even hacky, it's just a style choice.
Okay.
Mm.
Sometimes it's hacky. Some guys do it where it's a pet peeve of mine where it's like they want to get the crowd kind of involved, like, hey man, you ever, you know, like they'll ask them a question to set up their bit. It's like they don't need to know they don't need to have done the same thing. Just do your bit.
Yeah,
Just
yeah,
get
yeah.
into the bit. Like,
I mean,
why do you have to ask them first? You
Yeah,
know,
yeah.
I
It
think
becomes
it's
too
some
obvious.
insecure kind of thing.
Yeah.
Sometimes people do,
Yeah.
or they want. Sometimes it makes it easier. Like if you address things in the audience, you can get laughs easier than you
Yeah.
can on a story. So I think people kind of fall into that trap
Mhm.
a little bit. And some people, it's their thing. Like like what the guy that died recently, Don Rickles, that guy.
Don Rickles.
That was
yeah.
like his thing, and he was
Exactly.
really good at it. Bouncing back and forth with the audience, but just not
Do you
my
feel
style.
bad about doing it at all? Like, do you think it's mean?
Some guys, I think it's mean. Yeah, for sure. Because it's like,
Yeah.
You as a performer, you may have a thick skin, and you may have, but it's like I look at it like, somebody's come from they got a hard week, whatever. It's escapism. They want to like forget about
Yeah,
the problems.
They come to laugh and
Yeah,
they just, like,
and then
feel
when
like
some guy's
shit.
like, what's up, buddy? Look, what's going on with your shirt
Yeah,
there?
yeah.
It's like
Yeah,
that's the exact opposite of what he was looking
Yeah,
for.
yeah.
He wanted to get
You
away.
do seem like one of the nicer guys of comedy. That's
Oh,
for
that's
sure.
nice. That's
Yeah.
nice.
But do you agree, objectively speaking,
About being like
being
nicer?
nicer than most?
I have a
comedians?
reputation for being nicer, than most.
Yeah.
What I think is funny is I have a darker sense of humor, but I guess my fans and stuff seem to sense that like behind that I'm a nice guy.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
always like kind of assume that.
Yeah, yeah.
And I do try to be. I was like a little bit of a bully verbally. I was a really small kid growing up, and I remember looking back like picking on kids, like kind of to deflect from me being picked on.
Yeah.
And I still have like guilt over it, so I make a very conscious effort to not be that person.
That 20
Yeah.
people that graduated with you.
Ah, yeah, exactly, yeah.
Well, let's
Oh,
start
We
from
had
the-
the. I was gonna
So tiny.
continue on something. We had the opportunity to see your set the other night, which is a great set.
Yeah,
with
thanks for
Cash,
coming,
Really
yeah.
funny.
That was really fun.
And I don't want to
That
give
was
the
fun.
bit away, but it was something like you were telling this kid, and I was like so funny, man. Like I would not want to be that kid, in the crowd. We were talking about sex.
Oh yeah,
And he
yeah.
said that like, your mom and dad.
Oh, yeah,
that's
yeah,
your mom,
yeah,
that's
yeah.
your dad.
Yeah, yeah,
They're
yeah.
still fucking,
Right,
so-
right, right. That one
Yeah.
I look at like one of those like false where it's like it's shocking because it's like
Yeah.
printed, but it's actually like underneath. I like those weird ones where it's actually kind of a beautiful message.
Yeah.
Like that, good for them. Sex is
Yeah.
fun. They should still
They're
be having
still
it, but it's
doing
also
it,
so
still together.
uncomfortable. Yeah,
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 that's
yeah,
really
yeah.
So that was really funny.
Thanks, man.
But,
Thank
yeah,
you.
you were saying?
So I know you've already talked about this, so I don't want to emphasize too
That's
much
okay.
on it. But for people that don't know you, you're from a small town in Idaho, right?
Yeah, yeah.
400 people.
400 people.
That's it.
That's it.
Wow.
And isolated
That's really small.
geographically too, where it's like a lot of times, I'll meet people and they're like, oh, I'm from a tiny little town, and it'd be like, whatever, 400 people, 4,000 people, whatever. But it's 10 minutes from a city,
Right.
or 10 minutes from the suburb that's next to the city. Riggins is little tiny, and if you drive, there's only
Riggins,
one.
the capital, water capital. What is it?
Whitewater capital,
Whitewater
yeah.
capital.
Yes, that's the only thing that's kind of kept the town alive is whitewater rafting. But it's like there's one highway, you can only get to it, going this way, and if you go in one direction of the highway, 30 minutes you get to a town of 500 people,
Okay.
and then the other direction, 30 minutes you get to a town of 100 people.
So it's
And then
not
if you
really
go
close to
right,
anything,
and then
yeah.
if you go another, half hour, it's a town of 2,000 people, and but you have to drive several hours. You have to drive a couple hours to get to a town of 25,000.
Okay, so there are people if you wanted to see people. It's
Yeah,
not like
yeah,
you-
you get drive, but it's it's a ways to drive, and it's a tiny little town. It's because of the terrain and stuff. There's no like high speed internet. You don't even have it there yet.
Oh my god.
Really?
Because there's not enough people to make it worth it
Yeah,
to drag
yeah,
cable.
yeah,
True.
yeah.
We're gonna put towers and
'Cause that's
cables and all that.
expensive, yeah.
DSL is
Which makes it probably cool. Do you go back still or no?
I go back a lot only because my family. Not that I don't like the town. That probably sounds wrong. I don't know that I would go back if I didn't have my family there.
Right.
It's like there's a lot of kids I went to high school with that are still there and stuff. But yeah, my grandparents on my mom's side, my mom lives there, and then I have an aunt, and then my dad lives about an hour away. So they're all kind of still in that area.
Yeah, that's cool.
I thought somewhere you mentioned that your dad moved to Vegas at some point.
Yeah,
so you
yeah.
lived there for a year.
Yeah, my dad bounced around a lot growing up. He
He just went there for work. It wasn't
Just
off
for-
divorce.
it was after the divorce for work. Like my parents met in Riggins. My
Okay.
dad was like a logger. It's very like there is no white collar type jobs at all.
Yeah.
And then he followed some of his brothers to Alaska, to Anchorage.
Mhm.
My mom and I went up there with him when I was like 2 or something. And then when I was second grade, I guess they got divorced. And then I went with my mom back to Riggins. He stayed there.
Mm.
Then he moved to Arizona. I would go there in the summer a couple times. Then he moved to Las Vegas, and then I lived with him for a couple years there. Then he actually moved back to Riggins area, and I went back with him. So I was like in and out of Riggins my whole childhood.
Sounds like
So I
you're-
did have a couple years in Vegas, which was weird.
Yeah. It sounds like you're a nomad too. Moving
Yeah,
around a lot, all
yeah,
over the
yeah,
place.
yeah.
Very
No,
cool.
yeah, definitely. Like my dad is a extreme nomad. He's just it's funny. He's kind of getting honest about it now. It's like weird. He was interesting conversation with him. Like we've kind of drifted in and out of each other's life a little bit, and good spot right now. But it's like he has
It gets
5
better
brothers.
when you get older.
It
huh?
does, yeah.
Yeah,
And he's
for
just,
sure.
I just didn't understand him growing up. Like why wouldn't you just stick around and be here, stuff like that? But he's very much like a kind of a gypsy at heart.
Yeah.
And he just, he was talking about his brother, how his brother is just hanging out with the grandkids now and taking them to school. And he's like, man, I love the grandkids, like my kids.
Yeah.
He goes, I couldn't do that every day. He goes, I have to look for something new. He's worked in New Guinea now, in Mongolia,
Wow.
South America.
So that's probably where you get your artistic genes from, no?
Yeah, maybe a little bit. Maybe I'm not sure. No one in my family tree. In a weird way, his dad, my grandpa, was a Pentecostal minister, and I'm not a religious person, especially.
That's your Swedish grandfather that kind of put you
No,
on.
no, that's not. He was atheist. That guy. I had an atheist on one
That's on
side.
your mother's side.
And,
Yeah,
and
mother's
a
side.
priest. That's
and then
amazing.
and then
And a
this
minister.
preacher. Yeah, but like
The conflict, huh?
I kind yeah, a lot of that. But
you
I
hear
kind of
like different stories growing up.
oh for sure, yeah, both very extreme. Hardcore atheists, hardcore fundamentalists.
Yeah.
So it was like opposite spectrum there.
Did that give you more answers or made you more confused?
I think it maybe it gave me some angst growing up because you got one side of your family basically like very fire and brimstone, basically saying like if you don't believe it exactly like I believe it, you are gonna burn in hell. Hell was brought up a lot. It was a lot of fire and brimstone. And then I have the other side, which I was actually much closer to, and who don't believe in any of that thing. So I'm like, well, these people are saying that these other people that I love, like
Are
the
gonna
most
burn in
basically,
hell.
are gonna burn in hell. But I found them to be better human beings than the people preaching the fire and brimstone. So
And you
it was
noticed
like,
that at
what?
a young age.
Oh yeah, like
That's
my
really good. You get
yeah.
the alternative view, right?
Right.
that's
That my
cool.
great grandpa, the old Swede guy, he because he had a real thick. I mean, Swedish was like his definitely like primary language, and it's like he spoke English, but it was very like thick accent. And as a little kid,
Can you do it?
like his accent. It's been so long since I remember, but he was just I probably can't even do it. It was just he didn't talk much. He was just a stoic guy, really nice guy. Like he could literally get birds to land in his hand. Like he would feed birds
Wow.
crushed walnuts in his yard, and he was just such a gentle dude.
Yeah.
They would just eat, out of
They
his
pick
hand.
up on his energy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We had a
yeah.
guest here last week, Ali Sabed. He's an artist who actually
Okay.
did these,
Oh
drawings.
no
for
kid!
artists.
Oh wait, that's great.
He's
yeah.
really amazing artist, and he was saying the same thing. He just sits and like finches come sit on him.
Really?
Birds come just like. Hang.
That's
I'm
so
like, "Wow,
cool,
crazy."
man.
Yeah, pick up on that vibe like that.
That's
yeah.
really cool. Yeah.
So you basically you mentioned that you couldn't wait until you get out of town.
Yeah.
And that's the motivating factor for you to actually go to college. And
Sure.
Go to
Yeah.
Gonzaga.
Yeah. I just wanted to get out and explore the world. Like I was always a curious kind of kid, and I just saw like what Riggins was gonna be like if I stayed there. Like I don't know. It's an interesting element in town. Like my family is kind of they just kind of do their own thing. They're very like my family that lives there kind of keep to themselves. Very family oriented. But the rest of the town, it's like there really isn't much to do. People do some outdoorsy stuff, but a lot of people just I hate to say like waste their life, because not all of them do, but there is a fair element of town of just like they're partying with the same people they partied with literally 35, 40 years ago in high school. It's kind of like this weird rotating revolving door of sleeping
Yeah,
with the
they're
same
just
people.
comfortable
And,
and-
You probably going to
Yeah.
Arizona and Vegas exposed you to a little bit more than
it did.
them. It made you want more.
yeah, like Vegas, my class in my high school that I went there had more people than the entire town of Riggins by like a third. It was like I
That's
went
crazy.
from a town of 400 people to a class of 650 people.
That's crazy.
And so that was, some culture shock, but it was good because it made me like really realize, okay, like, oh, there's different stuff out there in life.
Yeah.
And then I was so glad when I went to college, even though I went to Gonzaga, which is not the most culturally diverse school compared to Riggins, way more culturally diverse. And it did just expose me to so many things and started opening up my mind. And then I studied abroad. I went to London for a while in college.
Oh wow.
Perfect.
And that kind of opened my mind further, and yeah, and then that just really built on that kind of initial curiosity and just made me. But there's a thing like when you grow up in a little town and you're always just looking at like National Geographics and things. I think it like instills a different kind of curiosity in you than if you just kind of like were born in Manhattan.
Yeah.
Because everything seems so far away for so long that like even though now I'm 40, it's like part of me is forever that little kid in Riggins wanting to see and explore and find
It's like
different
the
things in
Game
the
of
world.
Thrones map, the Westeros map.
Ah, yeah. I haven't seen the last episode, so you guys are
No
caught up.
spoilers. Yeah.
Yeah,
we
I'm
can't
one
spoil
episode
it.
behind.
Yeah, I mean, people are either nomads or sedentary, and some people are just super comfortable staying
Yeah.
in the same place for a
Right.
long time. I'm not. I mean, I've been used to moving around, and I think
Yeah.
some of the best things I learned from life happened through moving around to different
Right.
countries, different
Yeah.
cities, at this point, I'm super like moving doesn't scare me. If I could get up
yeah.
and go to another country tomorrow, I really wouldn't be afraid of it.
That's cool, man.
These guys would vouch for that.
Yeah, that's a great space to be.
Too much, yeah.
You know, because
exactly.
people get settled. You know, I think a lot of the stuff that goes on politically and socially in the world, it's just like it's it's fear based, and it's just fear that comes out of ignorance. You know, and it just people would just kind of expand the horizons. They would see that like people are just people.
Yeah, you
We
see
all
the
have the same
similarities
fears.
and the differences, and you see that
Exactly.
similarities are a lot more than the differences,
Yeah,
right? Everybody
yeah.
gets up in the day and pretty much after the same thing you are.
Yeah,
right?
my dad. It's funny. Like he moved around now more as an adult, doing like these random remote construction jobs. But like I'll never forget, he had never been east of the Mississippi, or really out of the country, except for he'd been to Canada and like the Mexican border. But he had never really explored internationally until he was like late 30s. And so when he was like mid 30s, he went with me on a trip to New York. Or no, I guess mid 40s. He went with me to a trip to New York and never been east of the Mississippi. And it was funny, his stereotype of people in New York was all from movies. Of just like the gruff New Yorker.
Yeah.
And then when we get there and we're walking around, like we stayed in Times Square and we're walking around, he was just blown away with like how nice everyone was, because he had this thing in his head that they're all gonna be like, get the fuck out of here, get out of here, what are you doing? You
So funny.
Jersey.
Yeah.
Similar story. My cousin and his wife.
Right.
They just moved here from London. His wife is English.
Cool. Yeah.
And his father-in-law, basically his wife's dad, called and he's like, Amy, did you have some coffee yet? It's like, Dad, I moved to LA. I moved to Brooklyn. They watch these like cop shows on TV and everybody talks like
That's
that.
hilarious.
So,
Yeah,
everybody
that's
has this
funny.
misconception.
And it's such a good thing, to like, just to go try different things. I mean,
Yeah. I
when
love
I'm
it.
sure you guys face that different. I mean, I can't imagine, with like the political stuff, like, being, like Persian and stuff. There's so many stereotypes, and it's from
There
people
is,
who
yeah.
have never lived around Persians, who have never been talked to anybody.
Although we're kind of
It's just-
sheltered being in LA and Orange County,
Well, yes,
we
that's
have
true.
it good here.
Yeah,
That's
I mean,
true. That's
I
true.
definitely sensed it more while traveling, especially after September 11th, because I was
Right.
traveling for music. We would go to Europe,
Oh,
and
yeah.
especially I remember that. I think like in Denmark and certain
Right.
countries, I just felt so much racism at the airport or on the plane. I
Oh,
got-
really? In Europe?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
It,
yeah.
was, it was a crazy
Yeah,
time. I
that's
get it.
true,
I
yeah.
get it. But I got on an Air France flight one
Yeah.
time going to Europe, and everybody was just so worried. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
I
Who's this
grew up in
bearded
Orange
guy?
County. Don't worry about it.
It is a crazy thing. I'm actually trying to address it in Monday's episode of like my podcast, where I'm researching the Ku Klux Klan, or Ku or Clue. I can never.
Coup.
Coup.
Yeah.
That's right. I thought that's
Yeah.
right. I saw the Ku Klux Klan
Yeah.
because of the Charlottesville stuff, and because I'm like, who are these people, and why are they still like, what are they still upset about?
Yeah.
Like, how's it still around?
So
Yeah.
serious. So serious. Dude.
So
Dedicated.
serious.
Yeah.
And I
So
was
let it
thinking like,
go.
Securing the bloodline, right?
I guess I'm gonna find out like how I'm just kind of starting the
Yeah.
research, but it's like such an insane thing where I think people make these weird judgments where it's like, like let's say that they're in all like mostly white neighborhood,
Mhm.
and there's like one black family, for example, and those and happen to be assholes. And they'll do this weird mental thing where they'll just be like, well, all black people. Right? It's like, no, you don't hate black people. You hate the Andersons.
Mhm.
Like, you hate
Yeah,
this
yeah,
family.
exactly.
It's just
It's like-
they draw from such a small sample size. Yeah.
Yes, yeah. It's just a crazy mental thing that people do,
Yeah.
So back to college.
Yeah.
So then you go to college. You study psychology. It's not
Right.
something you really wanted, but you were partying. You're like, it sounds good. Let me do it. Right.
Yeah, I mean, I went back and forth. I did. I'm such an idiot as a kid. I remember I liked the movie Silence of the Lambs. Remember Jodie Foster's character?
Yeah.
Agent
Yeah.
Starling or whatever. I actually
The
was
one
like-
where with the guy.
Hello, Clarice.
Yeah.
Oh, her. Okay.
Yeah. Clarice in the movie.
Okay.
And she was like an FBI profiler.
Right.
And I was like, that's what I'm gonna do. And then it's like I think then I realized once I got to college, it's like, yeah, well, me and 50,000 other kids had like the same idea, and there's like
Not
3
good.
jobs for that.
Yeah.
So then I'm like, well, what else do I do? And I thought I wanted to be a kid psychologist.
Yeah.
And I actually did get a job right after college working at Crisis Residential Center, like this place that was like basically a low-level counseling position that you would work to get experience to go on to grad
A
school.
child development counselor.
It was for like it was a part of the social work system there.
Okay.
Basically, when kids would run away, the police would pick them up. They would bring them to the CRC first, let them stay in a 5-day bed. If they get 5 days to stay there, their parents would have to come in and do a couple counseling sessions before they went back home.
Damn, you got them at their
to
worst.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
That's
yeah. So
admirable.
it was tough, but it did just make me it kind of just
Emotional,
yeah,
burnt out.
Yeah, but it burnt me out pretty fast. Like, I think to be a really good counselor, you have to have a certain level of emotional detachment.
Mhm.
And I was just too young. It's interesting where, like if I was not enjoying comedy and not enjoying this kind of creative endeavors now, I would consider going to counseling again now at 40. because I have such a different outlook on life.
Uh-huh.
But at 22, I knew I was not ready to help these people.
Yeah, you have some
know?
experience with that, right?
Really?
Yeah,
You did some
well,
counseling?
Well, yeah. I mean, psychology is my passion for the most part.
Yeah.
But it's interesting because you have a thing where you like to guide and counsel, right?
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
That's dope.
When I'm trying to now I'm kind of getting that out of my system in the podcast.
And that's what you're doing, right?
Where I've done some, I'll do
right.
just fun, entertaining episodes. People like a serial killer. I'm fascinated with dark stuff too.
Mhm.
But then I'll try and slip in something about transgender, like, well, what is going on here? Maybe we could be a little
Yeah.
more open-minded about, more empathetic in this situation. Or like I did one on ISIS, where
Yeah.
it's like maybe it's not what we think, maybe like there's a lot of people over there.
You can say that.
Well, I know. Yeah.
It's not what you think.
But it is so funny. People get so heavy-handed, and they're like, they don't want to see any. And so I try to sneak in my little kind of messages, with
So
some
you're still
humor and
serving
stuff.
your
Yeah,
purpose
yeah.
through that platform, which is
I'm
dope.
trying to, yeah.
It's
So
not-
then, you kind of get burned out after a couple of years, right?
Oh yeah, I didn't even make it. I mean, I did it technically, I guess, for a couple of years, but like part-time. But after 6 months, I knew I had to go into. And then I went into actually personal training. I got way into physical fitness for a while because it was the opposite. It was like you're not thinking about anything. It's very fluffy.
Right.
Like, there's
Yeah.
nothing deep. There's nothing traumatic. Very surfacey and way too surfacey for me. Like eventually, I realized I was just like a rent-a-friend for like bored middle-aged housewives.
That's so
That
funny.
was mostly my clients.
And they still play a counselor role too, right? You
Kind
got to
of, yeah.
motivate them
But
a little
but
bit.
it's petty, like it's
Oh,
stuff.
yeah.
It's like these
Did
were
you
like,
take your pills today?
Like a-
Right.
like a fake French accent.
Yeah. All your husband's he's been gone too much for work. Okay, And
So you didn't get any girls with a personal trainer?
I got married too young. I was already engaged. Oh my gosh, I probably. I mean, I'm glad I got married young because of my kids. But other than that, I should have waited a few years because there were definitely a couple girls.
Because I saw an interview where you
Yeah.
you said how much you don't have much in common with her.
Right. Like at the time.
I was surprised you were talking the way you did. I
Oh,
mean,
really?
I was like, yeah, where did this come from? Just a
I don't even
random
remember-
like.
I don't even remember what that was. That's funny. Yeah, no, she's a good person. She's just very,
completely
very
different.
different.
How
Very
old were
different.
you? I mean, I've dealt with that multiple
Oh
times.
yeah. Okay.
Too many times. but
Too
yeah.
many times. Well, we got married. We started dating at 21, and we were married at 23.
Oh my god.
And way
Wow,
too
that's
young.
young.
And like we went to a small enough college where
Why'd you have to marry her?
it's what's funny is like I don't. It was a weird kind of cultural thing there where like. Is this big Catholic university? Neither one of us were Catholic, but there was this whole thing of all of our friends were getting married. All of our friends, got met in college, got engaged right after college, and then got married
So it
shortly
was
after.
the
It was like
societal norm.
It's so effective.
It felt
that,
like
yeah.
everybody was doing it. It felt like I remember. It looked so crazy looking back. I remember thinking that if we didn't get married, who was I going to find at 23? How was
Yeah.
I going to date? Like there was no dating culture in Spokane.
Oh, okay.
Everybody was like serious relationships or married. And then it's funny when I went to LA later. I'm like, oh, this is how the world can be also.
Exactly.
But I just didn't know.
And
yeah.
you had two beautiful kids.
Yeah, so it's
on
worth
top of that,
it.
which
so,
makes it worth
So
it.
it made it worth it. Yeah.
So you have two,
yeah.
9 and 11.
Yeah.
And-
I got my
and,
son, 11, Kyler, and my daughter in row 9, and man, they're cool kids, man. They're
And
cool
you said they
kids.
kind of love talking to your stepwife. They kind of.
Oh yeah, their stepmom. Yeah, no, yep. I
Their
knew.
stepmom, not your stepwife.
That'd be a
Well,
weird
your
stepwife.
wife.
Would be a weird hybrid.
That would be
That sounds
weird.
very incestuous. Somehow.
How would
I
that
don't even
even-
know what that is.
how would that even work?
But like,
It's like a
Very Lannister.
Lannister.
Yeah.
I
yeah,
was
very
gonna say
Lannister.
that.
Yeah, no, she, Lindsay's very cool. She's a very like, very, very good with the kids. Like they know they can talk to her about anything. It's a really cool like special bond they have where she's a really, really good communicator. And she worked with little kids before. She's done random jobs. She worked as a stylist in LA for a while and a costume designer on just kind of shows and stuff. But she also worked at like a synagogue, not nursery, wherever the kids hang out while the service is going. Like
Yeah.
like the not nanny, but you know what I mean, like
I don't
like
know
a
what it's called,
daycare
but I got you.
kind of thing. Yeah, like working with little kids. So she's used to enjoys working with kids and yeah, man, they.
I came across your wedding website. It's still
Oh,
up there.
that's
Yeah,
nice. That's funny. Yeah,
And
yeah.
it's funny when I was reading your part, I was like waiting for like the punchline, and there was none. I was like, damn, you sell out.
I gotta be romantic with her. I did a few things in the test.
But cool
like,
proposal though, right? Taking her back to the water fountain when you
Yeah.
originally met
Yeah.
the first kiss.
Yeah,
Yeah.
man. Santa Monica, the promenade will always be like a little special spot for us. Yeah, that was
Yeah.
cool.
I tried to get creative with my proposal last year. there.
Yeah, yeah.
And I mean, it turned out okay, but it didn't turn out how you see it in your head. I was kind of like, I decided to do an underwater proposal.
Oh wow.
And so I'm like, all right, it's
Feel free
fine.
to make
and I'm
fun
gonna.
of it as a
It's fun,
professional
yeah.
comedian.
I always wanted to do that for whatever reason, and
Yeah.
I decided to do it underwater. And
You've always wanted to do that.
Well, I mean, not always. Since I was like 5-year-old, like one day.
One day I will marry.
No, like in the past few years, like
Okay,
thought about
yeah.
it, And so decided to go to Mexico and do an
Yeah.
underwater proposal and like videotape, the whole thing with the GoPro underwater.
Yeah.
Had that whole thing set up. Then and there's certain things that you don't think about. Okay, like so where the fuck do I put the ring under the water? Because it's not in a pool, it's in the freaking,
Right.
in the ocean. And there's currents. It's moving around, as a
Yeah.
ring. So I was like having a heart attack. So I set something up with like a tour guy. I put it on this stone.
And
He
where
promised-
does this happen?
This was in Mexico. In,
Okay.
near Playa del Carmen.
Okay.
So near Cancun, kind of.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
And so we basically the tour guide who was taking us snorkeling, he put it on a rock and he's like, it's gonna beat. I'm like, you sure? There's fish all over. I'm like, fish gonna swallow it. What's happening
Right.
with it? So anyways, I go back. You could barely like swim, and then you can't like record at the same time. So and then it's not as the water wasn't as clear as I expected.
Oh no, man! I was
So it turned out well though. It turned out. Oh, and then before my ex fiance now, she wouldn't.
Oh,
so you already.
So this proposal
Yeah,
happened,
yeah.
but now it's the relationship's
Exactly,
over. Okay.
exactly.
Okay.
He does that as a routine.
Yeah.
No.
We can take this part out if you don't like it.
No, it's
Okay.
fine. So anyway, she wouldn't before we even got in the water.
Yeah.
My ex decided that she's not gonna come in because she's scared of the fish.
Oh no! So now
So
it's
it
like
took her 45 minutes of begging, please. You really need to get in. You
Yeah,
gotta see
yeah.
this nothing. She's like riding on our tour guide's back, like in the water. So finally we did it. It came through. Everybody cheered, and and then we broke up.
So when did you guys break up? When did you guys break up? How long
It
after
just-
that?
No, we were together for over 3 years.
Okay.
And she's a great person, but it got to a point that wasn't working out anymore.
Yeah.
And a lot of it we realized after we got engaged, because things get more serious and you start thinking about the long term,
Sure.
and the marriage and kids and things more.
Sure.
So,
Sure.
I mean,
How many times have you been
that's kinda-
engaged?
Once. I've been,
Oh, just one.
yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
okay, okay.
Talking about relationships in general. But yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, you know what? That's smart though, man. Like to cut it out before, because I let relationships drag on. Not even talking about my ex-wife in general before, like drag on too long, where it's like I knew it was over, but I just like didn't
Yeah.
want to like, break it off.
Yeah,
and it's
exactly.
like it's so much healthier just to be like, no, this is not working.
But it's
Let's
difficult,
move on. It's difficult.
Especially when you live together.
Oh, yeah.
I give it one more try, one more push.
Yep,
It just
yep.
doesn't happen.
That's dope though. So you figured it out how to be a comedian and have 2 kids and have a good
Yeah.
marriage and still maintain and function.
Yeah. My wife is great. She understands travel. She had to travel a lot. She worked in production in LA for a long time, so she gets travel and she can be very independent and she just we're practical. Where it's like she's just getting into real estate now. She's there's obviously not like production going on up in Idaho.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
So it's like
Sales or.
yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Just,
I
like,
do
real
that,
estate.
yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool. So, but she's just getting started, just building her clients, made a few sales, but the income, pressure is all on me. So she
Sure.
knows that I gotta, right now I gotta tour to make a living.
Sure.
So, but part of the motivation for the podcast too is just to get income where I don't have to travel. Where I can
So
kind of.
you rather not do stand up?
No, I want to do it. I just want to do it differently. Like instead of going to Irvine for like 4 nights, for example, I would rather do 1 night, do 2 shows if the ticket sales are there,
got you.
and then move on, do a couple markets in a weekend, and then and then be off.
Then have plenty of time at home.
Yeah.
Okay.
And like a lot of times with my gigs now, I gotta fly in the night early to do like press and stuff. But if I can build enough of a fan base, I would love to skip a lot of that press.
And it seems like you've starting to you've realized that
Yeah.
there's a great opportunity right now in comedy, right? It's probably
Yeah.
a good time for comedy in terms of just being independent, being an entrepreneur.
There really is. I was bad about the business like my whole career because
To me, from outside, it looks
Yeah.
like you're having this realization. You're looking around, and you're like, "Shit! I mean, what do I have that they don't? Or what do they have that
Sure,
I don't?" And
sure.
it's very obvious. I'm like, "Why didn't he do it sooner?"
Yeah, I didn't. Why is like I bought into this system which
Yeah.
is kind of pushed on you by managers and agents
Yeah.
that you need them for everything.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And it's like they don't want you. I mean, my manager always said, she's like, don't focus on the business. You just focus on the art. And then it's funny. The second I started focusing on the business, that's when my career started to like move a little bit again. And I was like, why
But as
wasn't
an
I doing this
artist,
before?
is it easy to do that? It doesn't take away from the creativity. It doesn't put you in a place where you can't make art.
It, you
'Cause
know,
you're too busy on the business side, and
it can affect it a little bit. You know, you have to find that balance. I feel like
That affects me a lot with my music and stuff.
it is
yeah,
tough,
for sure.
but I think it's just kind of necessary. And what I like is when I'm taking a little bit more control over the business. It puts me in a situation with projects where I have more artistic freedom, where it's like, you know, it might take away from like the podcast, doing some of the businessy things with that might take away from like creating new stand-up or creating new temporarily.
Yeah.
But if I can get it work, then I'm in a situation where I have a business with no network executives above me, nobody telling me what to
So
do.
you're cutting off the middleman, basically.
Right, and then I have creative freedom, which definitely helps arts, you know.
Yeah.
And then it's like, so it's like I look at it as a temporary situation. That's my goal in my brain. I'm like taking 2 years. I have a whole business plan, which I've never done before, to get to a place where then I can hire people, teach them to do the business things I've learned, and go back to doing just the arts, but at a different level.
How do you feel about networking, like amongst your own peers and comedians? Because it doesn't feel like you're a part of a comedy clique. Why is that? Because you're smart, you're intelligent, you're a good human being. Like, why haven't I seen you on the Joe Rogan episodes? I haven't seen you on Ari Shaffir with the Bobby Lee.
Yeah, you know, I know Ari from I did his show, like, This Is Not Happening, but it's like, but I'm not close to those guys. And I think a lot of it was like having kids when a lot of my peers didn't.
Different lifestyle.
Different lifestyle, where it's like the lifestyle of most comics is they hang out in the comedy clubs, particularly certain ones in particular, like when they're not working. And it's a good career move, where it's like the comedy store is hot right now. And so, you know, you're not doing shows, you just hang out at the comedy store, you make friendships, you build relationships. Well, when I wasn't doing shows, I'm with my kids. So it's like that kind of avenue is gone, and it's like
Lindsay wouldn't let you go out late.
She would. She'd totally, she really actually would. She would totally support. But I actually don't want to. It's like I'm much more of my artistic kind of way is I like to be in my own space, be in a notebook, be at a computer, just kind of in my head, thinking, working on stuff. It's like where a lot of comics don't do that. They don't write it down as much or work on it that way, and they're more extroverts. They like to just hang around. I don't enjoy that. Like if I have a night off, I don't want to be at a comedy club.
That's so funny. That's exactly how I am.
Really?
Writing songs and music.
Yeah.
I mean, some people like to hang out at the studio, 4 or 5 people. They talk. This guy writes a little bit. That guy. I like to be in my own zone, create it, and then like talk to people about it afterwards.
Me too.
Go perform.
Yeah.
I can't even. Basically, like my productivity maybe comes down by 50% if there's people around me and I can't do, you know what I mean?
Me too. I've never been like a big network hangout guy. So I think you just realize after a while, it's like, okay, well, that's definitely one way to do it, but it doesn't have to be the only way. And so I'm just trying
think
to
about it, even like that Ari episode, I'm sure it's put you on the map on a lot of different levels that didn't. It's got what, like 600, 700,000 views?
I don't even know.
A lot of
that is so funny.
That's pretty cool.
I love it.
Is that a true story? Am I allowed to say if that's a true story?
It's a true story.
Completely true story?
Completely true.
So you decide at the age of 32 or 33 to start doing heavy drugs out of nowhere.
Just one night. Just one night.
Just one night.
Yeah. Like, because I basically.
Like, what drives a man to get to that point when he has 2 kids at home? Like,
I know.
Did you consider losing your mind possibly?
No, I did research and I did feel comfortable that like the asset I got, little rationalization.
The asset that I got
was from a guy who did it all the time.
Okay.
It was from a batch that he had already done it from, so I knew it wasn't whatever bad LSD is. I knew it wasn't that, and I had been curious about it ever since high school. I've been thinking about it for so many years. My kids that week, they're with my ex-wife. It's not like they're, like at home waiting for me to get back. So I have this freedom, and I'm like, you know what? I mean, it was a reckless decision.
Yeah.
But the curiosity built in me so much. I'm like, I really want to see what this feels like.
You felt deprived too, right?
Yeah. I'm like, I missed that out when I was younger. I did, and I'm like, you know what? Plenty of people have done it and been fine.
Yeah.
I'm gonna give it a whirl. But it was the most ridiculous night, even more ridiculous than that story where I went with an old buddy of mine, this guy Stu.
Can you tell the story for like 40 seconds so people know exactly what's going on?
So me and my old agent, this guy, he doesn't care. He said I could say his name. So Stu Golfman.
You didn't say on the thing.
And then they beeped it out because but he signed a thing saying whatever. But he was actually at the taping. He watched the story, and then they brought him up on.
Oh, he was there live.
Ari brought him up at the end, but then they didn't use that footage.
Okay.
But Stu and I he had done it before a few times. When he was growing up in Montreal, he knew a little bit about it, and so that kind of made me feel a little better too. And he was so we were just going to Vegas for the weekend. My girlfriend at the time was actually there with a different group of people, and we're like, let's just do it. We've been talking about it for a while, and then I was obsessed with the movie Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, where he does all kinds of drugs with his buddy, and so I'm like, well, let's just see what else we can get, and so we just wanted to see what kind of drugs we could get a hold of. I had codeine randomly, and then we just had weed. and then LSD.
That's it, yeah.
And then so we did, had some drinks, smoked some weed. I remember I had this weird, like suddenly I'm a chemist, and I'm like, well, I'll take some codeine to kind of keep me calm. Like, that
doesn't work out that way.
Doesn't work that way.
That's how people die.
Yeah, exactly. And so then we take, like a hit of acid each, go gamble a little bit. Doesn't really feel like it's doing anything. And the guy told me, he's like, I don't know about the potency. It might be a little low. I'm not sure. But it turns out it was just fine. And then so we go back, we take another hit, and then it's starting to feel something, but it's fun. We'll say, let's have it be more fun. We had 5 hits left, and we just split it. So we each took 2.5 more.
Wow.
So we had like 4.5.
One dose. The
Yeah.
last dose.
Yep.
Shit.
So we each had 4.5 doses
Jeez.
in our heads, and then I just went to like the moon. Then things went crazy.
Shit.
And I could barely function. I'm seeing like the worst things.
So you went on a bad trip. Like, pretty
Bad
much
trip,
immediate.
Oh, no.
because it was too much. It was just
Yeah,
too
yeah,
intense.
yeah.
And we're out in Vegas, and Stu got really paranoid, and he thinks people, because I've been making these jokes, I guess to give why he was paranoid. When we were moving in, I thought it was funny just to tell everybody at the hotel that we were going to do a whole bunch of drugs.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, they're just going to think I'm some idiot tourist just saying stupid stuff.
Yeah. And
So
making it
like
up.
when we're checking in, I'm like, we can do acid in the room, right? And she's like, aha. I'm like, we're going to do a lot of blow and stuff. That's cool, right? And Stu is like, we're in paranoid person. He's like, shut the fuck. He's like, stop. Because he knows that we really are going to do stuff.
But the sick part in you loved it.
Yeah, exactly. So it was like funny to mess with him. I always got off on like harassing this guy. And so, but then when he goes on his trip, now he's for sure like people are following us, and the hotel people know, and they're gonna like, we're gonna go to jail. And he's
That's
freaking
so
out.
funny.
And so then he wants to get away from me, but I'm worried if I lose him, I won't find him again in my own weird mental space. So I'm like, it just got so bad. And then we had this horrible trip. About midnight or so, I think we finally started coming down. And then that night, we actually ended up doing more stuff. I met up with my ex-girlfriend, and then I'm doing like, I'm just on now I'm crazy drug guy. And then I go to this weird nightclub, and I'm not a nightclub guy, like a Vegas nightclub guy.
On acid.
And I go there on acid. I'm kind of coming down. Then there's coke there, and now I'm snorting coke off the back of a toilet.
This will sober me up.
Yeah, this will sober me up. So now I'm doing that, and that's like not normally who I am. And
Yeah.
then I go to some weird people's house, and then they're doing ecstasy. So then I do that.
Oh my god.
And then suddenly, like, people are like naked and stuff, and I have the weirdest moment of that whole night. This is
Really
so surreal.
naked, or that's in your
really
head?
naked? They're
Okay.
really naked. I'm not tripping anymore. They're really naked.
How did you end up at a naked people's house?
My girlfriend at the time knew these people, and like we went there, and I think they were just kind of
Sounds like she really knew those people.
Yeah,
swinger
just
type.
relax.
I don't know, like they were just like people naked like
Yeah.
this. And I remember I was in a sauna. Sitting talking to this one woman who was way into nutrition, like, and it was so funny. She's like ripped, very healthy,
Nice body.
nice body, but also like really into drugs. So she's out of her mind on something. She is getting fingered by a naked dude as I'm talking to her about
Holy
protein.
shit.
It was the weirdest, and it was like
What?
it was the weirdest night of my life.
Sounds
I
like
mean-
Burning Man.
I want to go. To this party.
Yeah.
That's the power of law of attraction. I mean, you wanted to fear and loathing in Las Vegas.
found
you got
it.
I
I
mean,
found
what's
it.
the chances of the
It's true.
stars aligning that well for you to get like
Oh,
everything? You did
God.
the coke and then ecstasy, naked people.
Yeah.
Acid.
And then I got it all in my system, and then it's so yeah. Now I'm good.
Yeah.
I like whiskey. I like gin. The
Yeah.
evening nightcaps. But I don't
Yeah.
even. My wife likes weed a little bit, but I don't even care about that really.
Yeah.
Did you
Yeah.
enjoy recording that episode on TV?
That was fun. Yeah, it was.
Is it pressure?
It's different doing This Is Not Happening, something like that, because it's not your normal stand-up.
Mhm.
It's like because the premise of that show is it's true stories along a theme. So you kind of do a themed show or tell them like they ask for like we want hallucinogen stories or we want embarrassing stories, whatever. I did practice it in some stand-up clubs before doing the taping,
Right.
but it would be like a weird kind of intermission. It would be like more bits and then that story. But also like I was also kind of segueing into more storytelling stand-up wise anyway. So it didn't seem as out of place, I guess. But I really liked that. I would like to do more of that. It was fun to like prepare one story for a taping and then be done with it. Because I've always liked The Moth. Like, I'd love to tell that. It's like NPR storytelling kind of program.
Okay.
People
Yeah.
share like, personal stories.
Well, the video is doing really good on YouTube based on the
Cool.
views. Have you read the comments under it?
I did initially, and then I noticed that people
Because there's a lot of acid heads, I guess, that are like, yeah, man, yeah, right.
I know. I saw some
liar.
of those.
I'm like,
Yep,
I wouldn't know any different.
Well,
What's
and
up with that?
Some people, it's like.
Or how do you deal with YouTube comments in general?
I try to stay away from it now because YouTube in particular, I do like I reference it in my own kind of podcast now, making fun of like the things people say. but it's just like the trolls, man. They
Oh,
just
yes.
like they're not looking to appreciate anything. Like the funniest one, I actually was gonna do a bit about it, and I stopped for whatever reason. I think it was right when that thing came out. It was when that or some other set came out on YouTube. I made the mistake of like looking, and the first comment was like, I've heard this guy on Pandora. It was something like, he's literally the worst comedian of all time. And I remember, but I remember thinking, okay, if you've already been familiar with my work and you already consider me quite literally the worst comedian ever,
What the fuck are you doing here?
why when a new video of mine comes out are you gonna be like, oh, I can check this out?
Yeah.
Let me give this one a shot.
Exactly.
It's like, no, you already hate me. Just don't watch it. You
I know. It's like the number one rule of comedy: don't read comments. You
Yep,
know? It's
yep.
just,
Oh, you have
I mean,
to.
not comedy, entertainment. Yeah.
I know you have to stay away. Sometimes, in a weak moment, you will look, but it's like what. It's never good because I don't know how your guys' brain works with like your guys' music and stuff. But I'll read 20 nice comments and be like, oh, that's cool. Okay,
The one.
That's,
that's the one that sticks. The
Yeah,
negative one, I'm like,
yeah.
God, what? Why would they say that?
yeah, and we always talk about that, right?
Really?
It's just crazy. Like, I get hundreds of comments,
Right.
and that one, because you just like, sometimes they're so out of line, they just get like infuriates you. Like,
Right.
what the fuck are you talking about? Like,
Yeah.
who is this person? Like,
So
just
whoever's
wanna-
watching this right now is probably getting a kick out of it,
Yeah.
Like, oh,
Yeah.
I'm gonna get these fuckers.
If I could, I'd grab your throat through the
Right.
Instagram, yeah. But yeah, man. So that's
Yeah,
pretty
yeah.
cool. And you used to live in LA with
Used to live in LA with
and your
my-
wife's
Mhm.
from LA
She's
originally.
from Cleveland, and then she came to LA to go to FITM, that fashion
Yeah,
institute of design. Yeah.
downtown, right?
Yeah, downtown. And then when she was done with that, she went into production. She worked on mostly on like film and TV, and then she did some
Mhm.
touring with like Rihanna and stuff, like as one of the stylists.
Oh,
Oh,
that's
that's
very
cool.
cool.
So
Super cool.
she's super into like fashion and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So she was basically what caused the move? Why you moved back to?
Just family.
Idaho.
I mean, I shouldn't say just family. Part family, definitely. Like where basically like my son was wanting to spend more time with us. I wanted to spend more time with him, but I didn't want to like do any kind of custody battle. I didn't want to like even if his mom would have been cool with him, I didn't want to split him and his sister up.
Okay.
Just because of my own experiences, kind of growing up with divorce and stuff. So I was like, you know what? We just made a deal right then and there. We're like, you know what, man? We're gonna save up. We're gonna get a house, and you're gonna be
Mhm.
with us every other week.
Okay.
And so that was like what made the decision to go up there mostly. And then also we were thinking like even if we didn't have kids, I just I'm not like
Like, was it LA in any way?
it was
Because I live in
money.
LA. I was wondering.
It
if
was money with LA in the
Okay.
sense that like if you don't have family that already has like real estate or something,
Mm-hmm.
or you didn't get it when you were younger. It seems recently it's such like an insurmountable
It's
amount of
crazy.
money where it's
Yeah.
like, especially as an artist, where I'm like, oh man, I'm gonna have to gross 7 figures
Mhm.
a year for 20 years to like live the way I would want to live in LA, to have the kind of house.
A
Like,
lifestyle, yeah.
yeah.
Yeah,
Where,
yeah.
but if I go to Idaho, I can keep doing what I'm doing. I can have a much lower like monthly nut each to worry about, and that will kind of like take some of the pressure off
Mhm.
of having because I never wanted to do the sitcom necessarily. It's like I'm
Mm-hmm.
just figuring. I don't know why, like you were saying earlier, I don't know why it took me so long to figure out like this DIY stuff. It's actually what I enjoy more.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I like the creative control.
I guess when you're ready, right?
That's true. Yeah. That's absolutely true.
Are you thinking
Yeah.
about possible TV shows and stuff like that at this point?
No, actually, right now it's funny. I had an audition yesterday. Just sometimes I do one like on Skype or whatever, and I could care less. Like I maybe probably ironically it'll probably help me because it's like I'm so relaxed when I talk to them because I don't care if I get it.
Which
just
helps.
because I like what I'm doing. If I could get like Timesuck, if there was some version, if it grew, and then all of a sudden I could do a TV version of it to take things further than I could on my own. Where if I
Yeah.
had production money to like, I would love to actually like whatever topic I'm doing, interview people, go to the places where it happens,
Talk to an expert.
talk to the expert. If I could get something like that, that would be amazing. But just to do some random show, nah, I don't care anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did that. Like Playboy is my version of that, where it's like, it's funny. Like
Yeah, let's talk about that a little bit. Do you go
Yeah.
to the Sirius Radio or is it XM Radio?
It used to be Sirius, yeah. It used to be
Okay.
Sirius, and then they lost their Sirius contract. When I did it, it was just for their TV channel, which I didn't even know they had anymore.
Are you around other Playboy?
Bunnies.
Yeah.
Are you on Naked Chicks when you're doing it?
There was that, yeah.
Oh, so okay. So
Yeah.
it's not the Sirius or XM Radio. It's actually their own thing.
Right, it was their own thing.
Okay.
They used to also broadcast on Sirius, but then they kind of tried to come up with their own radio arm, but it wasn't very successful. They tried to do like a almost like a Playboy podcast type network, but like it's such a bad business idea. Where it's
Even
like,
though it was syndicated?
because no one's going to Playboy to
Radio.
listen.
Yeah.
You know, really. I mean,
Yeah.
like maybe for the one morning kind of show, they would like a morning radio.
Like a YouTube
But
show would be the
yeah,
like
YouTube
Mondays
would be-
work out better for sure.
Right. Or like, you know, something on Vimeo or whatever, or some kind of premium where you can have the nudity. You know, and that's what they ended up kind of doing.
Mhm.
So having them,
Like a Howard Stern type of thing, right?
Right. And it was just it wasn't like a terrible job. Like they paid me well. It was easy. I mean, yeah, you're working with like beautiful models or whatever, but it was just so they didn't want me. I remember when I first got there, I kind of went political a few times. I kind of went like social, and they're like, no, this is fluff.
That
like
shit
this
don't
is fluff.
fly here.
Yeah, right. and then after that, I just totally lost interest. And so
Okay.
then I just like showed up. It was a job, but that during that
You
experience,
still did 200 episodes.
still did a bunch of episodes.
Yeah,
And
that's
actually,
a
I started
lot.
working
Wow.
on Timesuck while I was working there, and I think that's what gave me the drive to do it too. Is like I wanted to do something that just resonated or mattered on some level, other than just fluff entertainment. You know, I wanted to do something that like kind of touched people for whatever reason. I don't know why that's important.
And it's
to me.
very cool. I mean, I don't think there is another podcast like Timesuck out there. I personally enjoy it, especially some of the episodes really sparked my interest. So
cool.
I mean,
Yeah.
you just decided to do that. Was that something that came from fans or?
No,
I mean,
it was.
the
You know, I had the thought where I'd always followed this. Kind of listening to
Well,
agents again.
first CBS
Yeah.
signed you, right?
CBS. Oh my gosh, there was such a story to get
Oh yeah,
this
let's
thing
get that
done.
story. Yeah.
The first I just, you know, I had some podcasts in the past that I kind of did. I was like, oh, you're supposed to do this kind of podcast as a comic. Maybe I should do this, or I'd
Right.
follow somebody else's lead. And then I'm like, you know what? If I'm going to spend a bunch of time on this, and it may not make any money, and it may not go anywhere, I should at least love it. And so I just thought about like, what do I do anyway in life? And I've always been super curious, and I've always like working on stand up, working on script or whatever. I'll end up being like, hey, whatever happened to so, and I'll like Google something. You know, suddenly I've lost 45 minutes.
Yeah,
and I'm
goes
just
down the
reading
rabbit
random
hole.
articles like, oh my god, what? And you know,
But
reading
you
one
love
more.
it.
But I love it. And so I'm like, what if I could do that for a job? What if I could do that? So then I came up with my pitch. Couldn't get a meeting. I only got one meeting in LA with like a podcast network. That's what my manager thought at first, to do a podcast network. They were so uninterested, they actually forgot about the meeting. So when I showed up, they're like, who are you? They're like, what are you doing here?
Damn.
And so I was like, oh, okay. So that
That
was
is
not a
those
good meeting.
stereotypical meetings they
Yep.
talk
Yeah.
about.
Yeah.
Yep,
Fuck
it was
you.
fuck you guys. And then CBS, because I did 5 albums with Warner Brothers, and so they had a relationship with CBS, and so at the time they connected me with them. They wanted to do it until they heard the first episode, and they're just like, I don't know, it's like it's too long. It's just you. I don't think it'll hold people's interest. We kind of go back and forth. I actually ended up making shorter ones. It's funny, my first Timesuck episodes are like half an hour because of their suggestion, which was totally wrong.
Yeah.
That's the one thing everybody wanted more.
Exactly.
But I listened to it, and then in the end of the day, they finally just told me, they're like, you know what, we just don't see being able to market this, and they just cut it loose, and that just gave me like more motivation to prove them wrong.
They even send you a termination
Yep,
letter, right?
yep.
And did you really print that out?
Yeah. I have that for motivation. I have it I had it on the wall in LA,
Yeah.
and now I have it in a file. And when I get my office, I'm gonna like frame it, and put it there. And eventually, it's funny, like not to be like weird about numbers, but like the number they wanted me to hit, to be able, I've like more than tripled it. So it's like if I'm
Wow.
and I do see their network. It's like Play It, and I see on the charts.
Play It's a
every once in
huge
while-
network.
and it is nice, like where it's like my podcast in the comedy space is growing far faster than any of theirs.
Yeah.
So there was a little bit of
Wow.
like
That's
fuck
very
you
cool,
guys.
man.
So you
I
can
love
be
that,
independent.
right? I mean, there's a lot of similar stories, right? Someone
Yeah.
said like fuck you to somebody, then they went, but they ended up giving the big fuck you at the end. Like the
Right,
guy who
right.
basically started Pixar. I don't remember his name, but I saw this like documentary on him, and basically they weren't having his drawings. They didn't really
Okay.
like it, and eventually he ended up being creating all those like some of the biggest
No
cartoons,
way.
like Toy Story and all those things, and having
Yeah.
his own studio. So I mean, yeah,
Yeah,
that
they're
happens
really
all the time.
I heard that with Breaking Bad, which is obviously such a well received show that it took Terry Gilliam, whatever his name is, but anyway, it took him like 7-8 years of just rejection, and then finally someone took a chance on it.
Yeah.
But I do like with like you can't necessarily do that with a TV show. You can't just be like, well, fuck you guys, I'll just produce it
Right.
myself. But
Yeah.
the entry costs for podcasting are more accessible, and you can really like replicate that studio sound kind of feasibly with a couple $1,000.
And it seems like
Yeah.
people are growing to love that more and more because
Yep.
it's more authentic. It's less
Yeah.
people involved. It's
Yeah.
it's more real.
Yep,
Mm.
yep, exactly.
Yeah.
You didn't think about going through what is it? All Things Comedy? Is that another network?
They never reached out to me, but
They
yeah,
didn't.
they I was familiar with them, but now I'm in a place where it's like I want to start. If it goes really great, I want to start my own network. That would be like the end goal, where it's like, and then be able to kind of give people who have concepts I believe in an opportunity, kind of thing. So I mean, we'll see if I get there, but like But yeah, there's no way I'd go with one of those networks now.
Yeah.
And the fact that you've matured and grown to this level is huge, and that's already beautiful, isn't it?
Yeah, you know, it's really exciting because I've done this for a long time,
Right.
and you know, you have so many projects that don't go anywhere, and your career goes up and down, and it's like, you know, with YouTube or whatever, it's hard. Well, as you guys have a huge following, like Instagram, right? Like, that's not easy, you know. Like, you guys have a huge following there, so it's like, you know how hard that is, and it's not like you could just be like, you know what, whatever, I'm bored with that. Now I'll just get a huge following here. It's like no, you gotta
start from scratch again. It's
right. You gotta
it takes
really,
a long time to build up.
And so now that I finally got something that's growing, it's like, man, I'm gonna give it everything I've got, you know, and just make it the best I can, and just try and keep that ball going.
But that's the beauty. I mean, once you get a taste of independent success, you never go back to it.
Would
you know what I mean?
So would you guys like on not to like flip it, you know, and become the interviewer, but like ever do like a major label or anything like that, or would you want to just stay independent and have the control?
I was with the label for my first album, and then I realized that they don't know shit about my music. They don't know how to promote me. They're not relevant. They don't know my crowd, basically the younger people, the way I do. So I ended up pretty much starting my own label, and I ended up, you know, pushing that. Then I ended up getting a bunch of other artists who are, you know, very successful and famous right now. In your on
your label?
Like, yeah.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah.
That's
so
really
I have,
cool.
Artists all around the world right now. Like I have 5-6 artists that I work with, and
do you have them like signed and everything, and like they're like just like
it's just very complicated.
You say Suge Knighted out? Yeah.
It's just like the breaking down the Iranian music thing is just it's so complicated that I mean just the fact that if I say rap music is illegal, it sounds so strange to your ears.
Sure.
You know?
Yeah.
But because of that issue, so we can't like really reach the monetary side of things. So I mean, we have verbal agreements and we're fine. We're like family. We
so
really
unfortunately,
get along well.
success doesn't translate into a financial outcome in that industry.
Yeah.
You know.
But I mean, you guys with your
But we're trying to translate it into this. So maybe partially one of the reasons that you are here is like, okay, these guys do have, you know, some sort of interest on the internet world. So it could translate into something.
I'll talk to you guys. I mean, it's, you know, dry business, but after we're done recording here, I'll and we can talk later, but I'll share all the info I have with like what I'm learning about monetization and all that.
Yeah,
I think it's so important to share that information.
Link up for sure.
Yep.
But let's talk about Timesuck.
Yeah, let's do it.
So for the people that don't know much about it or anything about it, you basically pick random topics because you've realized that people have short attention spans. Including yourself, right?
Including me,
So I'm like that too. So you basically pick an interesting topic and you talk about it for 30 to 45 minutes.
You know, it's expanded now to about 90. Just I don't know why it's settled on that, but started off and it's just kind of grown. I try to keep it about 90 now for whatever reason. With that seems to be like a good amount of time to get it all done.
Sure.
And what people seem to like. But yeah, it's all like listener suggested. It started off with a couple things I was interested in, and then people started submitting their own possibilities, and now it's kind of getting crazy where now it's like probably, I don't know, 20-30 emails a day of like, hey, talk about this, hey, here's this, and then I just have those compiled in a list. And when I'm figuring out new episodes, I just go through the list and see what kind of people are into and what resonates with me. Cool.
I love how the fans pick what they want to hear about, and then you go do the research and what's interesting, you know what I mean? That's very cool.
And I want to take that further, actually. When I get the app built, one of the things that I want with the app is like Imager, that website. You know how people, it's very simple. It's just like you upvote or downvote a photo. And that's how you end up on the homepage or whatever. I want all the topics in a list, and you upvote or downvote topics, and then the top voted topic
of the week or
of the exactly. I'll let the audience pick half of the things that way. So whatever the top ones is, I'll do like every other episode will for sure be that, and then I'll pick the other one out of the
kind of like
list.
a Reddit format, type of thing where the green arrows.
Exactly. And it's it's cool, man. It's like, you know, a lot of topics are things that I'd never really thought of before, and I'm glad somebody threw my way, and it's been interesting to see what kind of resonates with the audience. You know, there's been a weird thing where it's funny, like sometimes the least downloaded episodes are actually the ones I get the most emails about, like the people who do listen to it.
Hold on, so what does that mean? The most requested becomes the least favorite?
No, almost like it's just
the other way around, right? The one that gets the least amount of views ends up getting more of a cult type following.
Right.
And I totally identify with that with music, because there's these songs that I personally like love so much.
Yeah.
And they're not necessarily they don't have the most amount of commercial success.
Yeah.
But I get the most amount of messages about them, and
Isn't
then
that
people are
interesting?
just like, this place. It's very cool.
It connects with
The
people in a
emotional
different way.
connection.
Yeah.
Those are the people you want to stay connected to.
That's true.
But,
That's true. That's gonna be your base and your core and stuff. It's like
It'll
I like
never leave you.
Right. Right. Yeah. Yeah. I found that with like I'm trying to think of even episodes, but it's like North Korea was a very popular episode because it's like more topical, I guess. And not that I got like bad emails about it, but people were just like, it might have been like, oh, that was cool.
Yeah.
But then I did others where like the transgender one was more of like, getting people thinking. Another one, ISIS was one of those ones where like Walmart randomly was one. I did one on Walmart's business practices.
I gotta check that one out.
And then it's an older one, so I still kind of figuring out the format. And then Kurt Cobain recently, because I talk a little bit more about my own kind of like experiences with depression and suicidal thoughts, and different, like to kind of, and it really resonates with people where they're like so many emails of people like, oh man, I had these thoughts too, and thanks for sharing, or my cousin or my brother or whatever. It's cool to have that connection.
That's what makes it more interesting to people, right? When you bring that side out of it.
Yeah, I've been trying to get a little bit more, find that balance of, just information, because I do want people to be able to take away factual information, some comedy to make it fun, and then also being personal.
Is it translating into more fans coming to your shows?
For sure. Like last night, it's like, for whatever reason, a lot of Timesuck people came to the shows last night in Irvine, so that was really cool.
Wow.
And in some markets,
and what type of people are they?
What's awesome about it is
a
like
lot of white people or like
no,
colored people?
That's the best. So across the
it was
spectrum.
pretty spread out.
Yeah, and what I like about like when I was in Atlanta a while back, and a bunch of Timesuck fans came to Atlanta, and they came when I was in Orlando. And what I love about it, and I can just tell based on what people like on Instagram and things, very diverse as far as age, gender, ethnicity, and also just like political.
Yeah,
like
I would imagine
conservative, liberal,
more intellectual to a certain level, and more curious, and that's
and that's the thing.
Smarter crowd.
And that's what I want to do with the app too. Is like the huge goal, if I can get it, I want to build like a little community where people could like message each other instead of just going through me. I want to have a message board system in the app where they can message each other, talk about the episodes, and also get to know each other.
Well, that's one of the things that's really dope about you that I've noticed is, and I don't know, I think in a short amount of time it doesn't work in your favor, but I think in the long run it will. You don't have this clear side that you're on, so it could be anybody from the left all the way to a very conservative person that likes you for a different reason. I've noticed, right? So some people, they choose to take one side and then they create their fan following that way, and it's easier to do that.
Oh sure, if you play to like one group, it's a little.
So are you conscious of that? Okay.
Yeah, definitely. Where it's like, I don't want to necessarily try and connect with like I don't want to play to the left. I don't want to like play to the right. I want to just be authentic. And I've never been like a group person that way, because I think groupthink kind of shuts your brain down in certain ways. It's like both sides have valid arguments for certain things. It's like, why can't we talk about that in a real way?
You can't be a real human being and just agree with everything the side says.
Exactly.
I hate that.
Me
I
too.
hate that, like black or white thing.
Right. Me too. And so it's like I know there's a lot of other people like that, and like you said, it's gonna take a little bit longer to find them.
Because it does hurt a little bit too, right?
Sure.
It really does.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, definitely. Because it's like I'm not part of the alt scene, even though I think a lot of my material is probably more alt than a lot of the alt comics.
Yeah.
But I'm not all that. It's like so I don't get part of that scene, but I'm also not part of the mainstream scene. It's like I have too many leftist thoughts to be part of any conservative kind of group of comics, but I have too many kind of almost libertarian thoughts to be part of a real left crowd. And so it just kind of means you're just kind of on your own. But it's like. But the guys I liked the most, like my favorite comic was Carlin, and I feel like he was on his own. He just like was a philosopher who put jokes in it.
And you can make it so funny.
It so funny. It's like that's my goal, is to get like kind of move towards that type of following. And what's cool about the Timesuck people is I feel like I finally found my vehicle to gather them.
Your tribe.
Yeah, my tribe. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and when they come,
what
they're
do you
like
call them? Timesuckers.
Timesuckers. Yeah, Timesuckers. But
Nice.
they're like. By and large, like they're very respectful, polite, curious, open-minded people, and it's just like I'm just so grateful that they're into what I'm doing, and it's like it's just a cool, give me some faith in humanity, where it's like instead of just watching the news and be like, what the fuck, it's like I talk to these people and the emails I get, I'm like, oh, there's a lot of good people out there, a lot of good people who are willing to change, who are like willing to evolve based on new information,
and that's what's making life more beautiful for you too.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you get stuff from online fans who don't know much about you, and they assume like, oh, you moved back to Idaho, so maybe you're alt-right, or you kind of maybe racist?
Oh yeah. I mean, I do that joke now because it's like Idaho has the worst reputation and I know why.
Does it have any real basis? I mean,
it has a little bit. Here's what happened to Idaho. Idaho doesn't get any press, for any kind of events because it's like not much goes on there.
Yeah.
And so what happened was there was a situation called Ruby Ridge, not far from where I live now, but it was a long time ago. It was like 20 years ago, a little over 20 years ago. But what it did is it shed a light on a small population living in Idaho there was an Aryan Nation compound. But if you look at it like analytically, it was like
you got the brochure sometimes.
What now?
You got the brochure sometimes?
No, I didn't even get that.
Because they do throw out the brochure.
Right, yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that's their thing. Number one way of advertising. They're
The
still following the
pamphlets.
1990 model.
Yeah. That's hilarious. Well, you never see them up there. What's funny is like, and now I think they're gone, but there was this compound there for a long time, and it got a lot of press for a couple years. So that was like a whole generation's only association with Idaho was Aryan Nations.
Oh, that's
to the point that when I went to college even, I had kids, when they found out where I was from in Idaho, straight up just asked me, they're like, were you a skinhead? Or there's a lot of skinheads at your school? And I'm like, I literally have never seen one in my life.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Nope. But like, they were just one group of weird dudes in the woods that the rest of the community was horrifically embarrassed by. But that doesn't make the press. All that makes the press is skinheads up in Idaho, and it's like that was the only thing people heard. So it's like there is.
It's like on a larger scale, I guess the same thing with like the terrorist attacks. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Billions of Muslims around the world.
Right.
Or there's like and obviously they're not involved with this, but that people get that image because that's what they hear on the news.
Oh, for sure, absolutely. I mean, that was one thing I was trying to explain to people, like with the ISIS episode. That thing of like, nobody hates terrorists, I would imagine, more than like most Muslims who are like, you motherfuckers.
Yeah, most of ISIS's victims are Muslims.
Right, exactly. And it's like, whenever that happens, you're like, all right, now I'm going to get more weird stares in public.
You don't even have to be a Muslim, right? Because even I experience it.
Right.
As soon as they do it, the first thing is like, God damn it, motherfucker.
I'm sure.
I'm sure. This is fucked up for me to say, but when you hear something fucked up happening in the world and you realize they're not Muslims, I'm like, yes.
Oh yeah,
which is really sad. It's insecure, but it's real.
Yes.
Yeah, it's real.
Because you're going to suffer the consequences of some idiot you could not be more ideologically opposed to, who you've never met, who you have nothing in common with, who happens to have some genetic similarity with you, and then you get stares. Like it's such a ridiculous thing that we do to each other.
Yeah, so many different levels. First of all, they assume we're all the same country and culture. I mean, there's so many different countries in the Middle East, different cultures.
Right, then they hate each other. A lot of them, so it's like they're not buddies.
Yeah. Then they assume that because you're from the same country or same region, you all have the exact same beliefs.
Right.
Which is ridiculous. Like, not all Americans or not all French people have the exact same beliefs. You know that. So why do you assume that, other countries are...
There's a lot of psychological... Well, you probably like with psychology, too. It's like, I need to study it more again. But, like that, what's that? It's the us versus them mentality. I remember studying it so many years ago. But it's this weird thing people do where it's like, okay, members of your tribe or whatever, or your group, if they... You know John, like Maz or whatever like that. And when they do something off, you're like, oh, that was weird for them to do because they're a good person. And that was very like atypical of kind of who they are, And so you just understand that they're a complex person and that usually they're good, but then maybe they did a bad thing. Yeah. But then when you see somebody else from another group do something bad, it's like, oh, that's how they are. It's like this weird psychological thing where it's like, oh, they're bad because he did that. So he's a bad person, and their group is bad, or whatever. It's a strange.
Or we're raised to think that way.
Yeah. Right? Yeah, that's the thing too, man. That's what I'm learning with like just starting the research for like this Ku Klux Klan thing. It's like you don't want to give anybody a pass for like hate thoughts, but then when you see the backstory of some of the members, and they had like some crazy like horrifically physically abusive father who was like the most aggressively racist person you can even imagine, and that's who's raising them. And beating them, and like, oh my God, this one guy who was like, I just read, I think I'm thinking about it more because I have a new dog where I'm just like, why would you do this? But this guy, like, he was such a hateful dude. This is like in Alabama that he took his son this is like this Klan, I don't know, hierarchy guy, and his son ended up lynching a black man. It's a horrible thing, like in the 80s. It was like way after all that stuff was supposed to be done. Yeah. But you learn about this kid's childhood, the kid who did that in the 80s. And his dad was a monster. And I remember one time, little boys, love their dog or whatever like that. Well, the dog was trying to dig a hole under the fence. The dad made the son hold the dog, and to teach the dog a lesson, he took a knife out and cut its fingers off.
Oh my God! And
then took tar to cauterize, like to seal the wounds. And it's like now he won't be digging anymore. And it's like, so it is.
That's a different level of evil.
Oh my God, it's evil. It's evil, but it's like. Yeah, like you're saying, like people are raised. It's like, man, how
And
do
we
you?
don't even have to go
do you
to
combat
that extreme
No,
of a
no,
case,
no, it can be more
right? I mean,
casual.
there's a
It can be more
concept of
casual.
non-duality that me and Arif talk about sometimes, and that's basically we're raised to think always good, bad, white, black, you know.
Right.
And it's
Yeah.
not like
Yeah.
that. There's just a
No.
shade of gray, but
Right.
we're raised to think that way, and because of that, we become judgmental.
Yeah.
We have this eye
Yeah.
that we speak condescending to people that don't
Right.
agree with us, and
Right.
it's a wrong way of thinking. It's a wrong way of programming,
It
and
is,
hopefully we
yeah.
could change
It's-
that
it's-
through
yeah,
maturity.
It's embedded in us. And
Yeah.
it's
Right.
horrible. I mean, you might be driving, someone cuts you off. If they're Asian, you might be like,
Yeah.
think like, like go back to that stereotype. But if it's
Right.
if it's a white guy, you'd be like, okay, shitty driver.
They're always Asian.
That's it. You don't think get back to the thing.
Speaking of shitty drivers.
Same thing. But if like,
Yeah, Airfun's the worst.
Oh,
What?
funny.
No, that's not what I
No.
meant. But I was gonna segue that into your DUI.
Oh yeah, that was.
I've never heard you talk about it
Yeah.
through the research that I did, but you had a problem getting into Canada because of it, right?
Yeah, and I have a joke about it on one album where I do make fun of myself and talk about it in a joke, but like that happened in Santa Monica. Really, just a really
How old were
dumb
you?
night. I was
Before the kids or?
no right after my divorce, maybe a couple years out. I was in all this
Oh,
like
that's justified.
the
then.
LSD stuff, like DUI, it was all like in this window after the divorce. So I was definitely not in a
Oh,
good
you were
mental
coping.
space. Yeah, and I fell into a relationship right away with this girl, poor girl, really nice girl, but I never should have gotten in a relationship with her. I was
The
not
rebound lady.
Yeah,
The real victim.
the real victim. True. For
You're paying
sure.
for that karma right now.
I know.
Somehow.
Yeah. Oh God. And I remember one night, the backstory of the DUI. I can't believe looking back I did this. I'm dating with her. Well, I wanted the relationship to be over, but I didn't have the balls to just end it. And some other girl just started talking to me at a coffee shop. And when I was with a friend, it was like, it was the weirdest. I don't know. She wasn't flirting necessarily, but like when you're in a relationship and all of a sudden you're getting a number from some random other girl, like why are you doing that?
Yeah.
And then not only did I get her number, I invited her over to hang out with me and my girl. We're like having friends over,
Right.
but she didn't bring a date, so it's just like this other
Oh.
girl. And then it ended up later at a bar with like me and my girl and this other girl, the weirdest vibe. And it's like it was just a really stupid night. And actually another friend of mine was there, but not with. And then he was the designated driver. And then on the way home, I felt fine, and I was like a mile away from my apartment in Santa Monica. I'm just like, no, it's good. I'm driving. So I had a designated driver.
Yeah.
Chose not to use him.
That's the
Girlfriend and I
worst.
get in an argument on the way about this other girl. She was totally justified. I was an idiot to have brought this. And then so as we're arguing, I realize I'm missing my place, and I just pulled this crazy turn at the last second to try and like swing into my parking garage, and did like a power slide, like a Mario Kart power slide, and just went right into a tree. And thank God,
shit.
like I didn't hit
Wow.
somebody or whatever, because that was the alcohol. It's like I could have, in a normal situation, sadly probably driven fine, but I wasn't making good, quick decisions.
Mhm.
And the cops just.
I just waited there. I smashed the car into a tree. So
Shit.
I just was like sitting there. Right, literally, the tree was right next to where you get into my parking garage. So it's like.
Is that the right thing to do? I mean, not on a moral level, on a
I'm glad it-
caught level.
You could have got an Uber for your designated driver. It was him driving.
I know.
you
Yeah.
But you were drunk.
But I just
Yeah.
then I just waited for the cops. There was nowhere to go. Couldn't move the car.
Yeah.
And then they took me to the Santa Monica jail.
You couldn't just
shit.
leave the car there?
Well, I thought about that actually at the time, but I was like,
I'm just not
they would have traced it to me.
convinced that this is the best way of going about it, is it?
You mean just
don't know.
waiting for him? I thought I would have gotten more trouble.
Yeah, you would.
Mm.
You would.
Yeah.
I mean, if technically you could have gotten more trouble for it.
Leaving the
but,
scene of an accident.
I mean, it's a shock moment too. You kind of like
Right.
Yeah.
I
you're
was
out
not
of it
thinking-
yeah, but I mean, you could have probably
Yeah.
got someone Uber.
I know.
He was a driver, like a sober person.
But I'm kind of glad in a
because-
way it happened because it made me like I'm done with that. Like
Yeah.
Yeah,
really
reality
showed me-
check stuff.
Yeah, reality check was good for me. You know.
I've been
They
through
took you
that.
to jail?
Yeah. It took me to
How was
jail.
that? Was your first time?
First time in jail. Yeah.
Oh, shit.
It
Street
was.
cred.
Yeah, it sucked. Yeah, it
Yeah.
was weird just being in this, getting your picture taken in a cell, and then the guy is like, it was so cold in there.
Yeah.
And
Hungover.
Shitty, horrible.
Yeah,
Shitty food.
yeah. Okay, have you spent a night there too?
I've spent a few nights.
Oh, have you? Yeah. And then they wake you up. Like he wouldn't let me fall asleep. He'd
Yeah.
come by and like slam on the thing.
I actually
Like,
went to prison. I mean, not for with no charge, no crime.
Right.
It happened.
No way.
After September 11th.
Oh my
You
God.
know, it's
what?
a really long story. I don't want to.
Okay.
I'm
Okay.
not that I don't want to get into it. I
Sure,
just don't want to
sure,
waste the
sure.
show's time with
Okay.
you. But basically, they told me to. I didn't have my American citizenship yet. Because I have two older brothers born here. I wasn't. I was born in Iran because my family always moved back
Oh,
and
okay.
forth.
So you happen to be there.
So
yeah.
I didn't have my passport yet, and they said whoever's from Iran, this country, that country.
Yeah.
By the way, none of the countries that none of the hijackers were from any of these countries, you know. So they didn't call in people from Saudi Arabia and Pakistan.
Yeah.
But
Very
anyways,
formal, just like come, we just do some paperwork.
Dude, like, we just want to talk to you. They talked to you in 5 minutes, bunch of bullshit questions.
How shady is that?
On me.
So shady. Yeah.
I was 19, so you know. Then they took me to another building. They pretty much interrogated me till 5 a.m. Which mosque did your grandpa go to in Iran? I don't fucking know.
Right.
Like, what are you talking about?
What church your
What's
grandpa
the
got
last
to?
thing? I mean, I don't. It's just like I don't think that, you know. It's some crazy
Yeah.
questions. You know, are they related to any terrorism organization? And then so
my
I'm
God.
like, that's the reason we fucking moved to this country, man. But
Right.
anyways, so they take us to jail, and then they take me to Santa Ana City Jail, Westminster Jail.
Yeah.
And then they eventually moved us to Lancaster Maximum Security Prison.
Holy
We were there
shit.
for a couple of weeks.
Holy shit.
And, you know, fucking freezing cold, shitty weather. We're mixed in like a big room.
I've been to Lancaster, Pennsylvania.
No, not Lancaster,
Oh, that's
Pennsylvania.
in California.
Lancaster Maximum Security Penitentiary,
Oh, I don't
which
know what
is
that
in
is.
Lancaster, kind of probably about an hour outside of LA or so,
Oh, wow.
something like that. And
Okay.
it's in the desert.
Maximum security.
Pretty much
That sounds
freezing,
crazy.
shitty
That's
food, and we were
terrible.
kind of mixed up with the murderers and drug dealers
No
and
way.
other people, and just kind of talking to them.
Like
and,
having lunch, like eating meals with the
playing
regular
cards,
population.
you
No
know.
way.
yeah,
Wow.
getting their stories.
I'll be scared.
Oh yeah,
And
yeah.
interested at the same time.
I mean,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, there would be a like. what
The
do you-
curious part of your mind is like,
Did you make up a story about that you had like done something like to have cred in there?
Well,
Like,
I mean, terrorism's pretty hardcore.
but there was enough
But you-
of them.
You killed somebody? Yeah, well,
Maybe.
I'm about to blow myself up. But no, but the thing was that we weren't in the like 1-man, 2-man cells.
Right.
We were in these larger rooms where they keep like 60 or 70 people.
yeah.
So we were together. So maybe like half of that population were the people, I mean, drug dealers, murders, whatever crime they've done.
Yeah, yeah.
And the other half was me and a bunch of other innocent people with no charges, like that were, you know, family people. But I mean, in some way, the positive is that I actually got to see what inside of prison's like,
Right.
you know, without having to stay there too long.
Now when you watch those documentaries or whatever, like the MSNBC, you're like,
I'm like,
okay.
hold on,
Yeah.
that's not the way it goes. Let me son you on
You
it.
could be a consultant now on like a.
Yeah.
That's so nuts.
Yeah.
I do want to not to like deviate the show, but just like last thought on mine, but like you know, whenever they have those guys like the interrogators and like let's say like right after 9/11, like they have like I would be curious to know like were they required to undergo any cultural training to actually learn about the population that they're actually interrogating because that would be logical. Where it's like you know like right like if
I would
you,
imagine they would do it not on a standpoint of empathy. It's probably to find ways of.
yeah.
You got to know how the other person thinks, right?
Yeah.
What did
Right,
Tyrion
yeah.
say? This
Yeah.
the thing.
Tyrion.
You got to know your enemy's way of thinking in order
Yeah.
to know how they think to be
Yeah.
able to
Oh,
operate.
Well,
in
I
that
mean,
sense,
You're
yeah.
probably right. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that probably it's more so that way now. Maybe they
Yeah.
have more experience with it, but at that time it was pretty new. I mean, it didn't seem
Yeah.
that way. They pretty honestly, this lady,
Right.
she was such a bitch. I mean,
Wow. I started doing comedy in that atmosphere, and I remember it was it sucked so much for like a year there. Where if you did anything that wasn't like USA,
Yeah.
USA, you know, like people would fucking get pissed, like really pissed. You know,
Yeah.
anything that wasn't super pro-military, super like pro-war.
Are we talking about the bases?
No, just comedy clubs. Just comedy clubs. Like in the
Everywhere.
Midwest, you know, like in like 2002, 2003, 2004.
Really? The Freedom Fries times.
Right,
Yeah.
right. Exactly. Like if you didn't already have a built-in audience of very liberal people, like if you weren't like David Cross, who could do rock clubs in front of
Yeah.
people who already know who he is and agree with his point of view, if you're just doing a random audience, oh man, I just see people just infuriated by anything that wasn't, you know, like such blind nationalism.
yeah,
Mhm.
You know,
definitely.
and that's why like part of my podcast too was because it came out of you know, when Trump got elected, I just saw that same kind of vibe again of just this blind nationalism, and I'm not even gonna like, you know, like jump on the like bash, you know, one side or the other,
Right.
but I just noticed that people all of a sudden immediately just got into these two camps again of like, nope, these people are idiots, nope, these people are not patriotic, and I don't think either side actually
Camps of
knew.
separation, yeah.
Yeah, actually knew what they were talking about. Like I just felt like this weird thing of like, oh really? So you like such and such? Why?
Yeah,
Well, because they're the best.
that's it.
Why are they the best? USA.
yeah.
But what does that mean? You know, it's like there was
They
no
took our
like.
jobs.
Yeah, there's
Right,
no-
right. But there's what job were you gonna get that they took?
Yeah.
It doesn't matter.
South
You
Park
know?
episode on that's so funny.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Oh, I
it's
bet.
really-
I bet.
It's an older
They're so
one, you know,
smart.
but yeah, so funny.
Those guys are so smart. I think those are some of the best comedic minds.
Yeah,
of the,
and I
the
feel
last.
like I don't know how long the show been around. I don't know exactly. Maybe
It
like
was around when I was in
20 years.
20
Yeah,
years.
that's been
Yeah.
long.
I think 20
And
years.
it hasn't lost its quality, especially.
Yeah.
I'm not like maybe I would say like a class A fan. You know,
Okay,
I like
yeah,
the show,
yeah.
but I mean I have friends who are, and they say basically the writing has not like dropped at all. It's been
Those
been
guys
great,
are those guys are incredibly smart. The levels, you talk about that in comedy where it's like where you can do like lowbrow, do what I like fart joke, dick joke, and then you can do like the super highbrow, just the socio-political kind of esoteric type stuff. Those guys do it all in every episode.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
the dumbest humor and the smartest humor.
Very true.
It's
Did you
very
do any
tricky.
writing for any TV shows or anything like that?
No, I did writing for I did
Because a
write.
lot of
That's not true.
comedians start as writers, right?
Yeah. I moved into I wrote a buddy of mine sold a sitcom in Canada. Just this family. It's actually Molly Ringwald and Jason Priestley. We're doing some parental show, and so I wrote 2 episodes of that. And then I worked on a bunch of reality shows, which was the skills I learned helped me with structuring the podcast now. But it was soft scripted, they'd call it, where you basically like
bullet points.
yeah, you do bullet points. Basically, with reality TV, what they learned is like the early shows, like the OC, these kind of things. They would film those in true reality fashion. They would have a small production crew hang out with people for months and film like around the clock.
Or the MTV Real World and stuff like that.
Yeah, exactly. The early MTV stuff.
Right.
But that's expensive to have like not only these people hang out for months and months and months, film. Well, then when you go into post and you got to pay an editor,
Takes forever.
Because you're building these things completely in post, where you have no idea what the narrative's going to be for this episode. You're just like trying to throw things together, and they realized it was way more cost effective to bring a few people in, figure out what the show is, kind of push people into a little bit different archetypes. It's like, okay, you're a little bit of a hothead. We're gonna ramp that up a little bit.
Yeah.
You're kind of
It
quiet.
makes it
you don't
easier to
say
make
anything.
adjustments on the fly too.
Yep. And then what you do is then the producers, when they go into the field, they go in with a plan. And you just kind of write out scenes that it has like an arc, it has some conflict, it has some resolution in the end, and you don't have to have the people say the exact things, but you want to, for example, you're running a bakery, you have a deadline,
You hate your dad.
but you hate your dad, like that,
Like that.
yeah.
My dad hates me.
We love you, bro.
Why is that?
We love you. I'll be your daddy.
Is it because he refuses to say I love
Dad.
you?
I don't know.
I don't know.
Oh, jeez.
Oh jeez. How did we end up there?
That's funny.
Oh, man. But that's kind of how like Curb Your Enthusiasm is too, right?
Oh, yeah,
That's what I hear, which is
yeah.
amazing. I mean, they just kind of say this is what this scene's gonna be about, then they go in and they kind of freestyle and like make it up.
take a bunch of takes, and Larry David, another
so
genius.
funny,
Oh,
man.
I love Larry
that
David.
show.
Yeah,
I
so
love that show.
smart, man.
He's
So
fun.
smart.
He's
yeah.
fun.
Yeah, for sure.
I heard some really cool stories where he's like done some of my dream things where he made he made enough money early on with writing and stuff where he didn't really need stand up.
Yeah.
And there's just like stories, guys are always like fighting for sets and stage time, but he was the guy where he would like go to the club. He's supposed to go on a stage in 5 minutes. He would just look at the audience and be like, nah, and you just leave.
That's so
Like,
funny.
he just
So
wouldn't, like,
good.
or even on stage, he would like get up, start doing jokes. He's like, you guys aren't right.
I'm
for
not
this.
feeling
and then just
you.
leave.
Yeah.
I'm like, that's
Well,
hilarious.
Well, not to like put you in a category, but you're considered observational comedy,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And that's what their lane is, Seinfeld's
Yeah.
lane is, and all that
Yep,
too, right?
yep.
So I can imagine how you actually appreciate that type of
Oh,
comedy.
for sure,
Yeah,
for sure.
yeah.
And I appreciate the creativity of some of those guys. I think the guys stylistically that I don't listen to anymore because I don't want to be too close.
Sure.
But I always feel like Patton Oswalt. When I hear him, I'm like, structurally, I think I'm fairly similar to like a guy like him, where it's
He
like
has some good stories.
some personal, some observational, but like twist stories in weird ways and throw in weird imaginative pieces.
Yeah.
But Larry David, man, that guy is
It's so money. It's
he's,
really good.
He's sharp. There was also like a great story where George and Seinfeld was based on him and all that.
Yeah.
And there was
exactly.
that Seinfeld arc where George gets fired, quits or whatever, and leaves but then he just shows back up at work. That was based, I guess, on a real thing where Larry David got frustrated that his sketches weren't getting on the air at Saturday Night Live, and he had like a whole big thing like quit, I'm fucking out of here, like slam the door, like that leaves, and then like realized that he needed the money,
He just went back. No.
and like I think
Like nothing happened.
Yeah, like two days later he just showed up.
So funny.
And
We
he
still got some of that coffee.
and he just sat in the writer's room and just
Right.
was like nothing had ever happened.
Yeah.
And it worked, I guess. Like they were just like, Larry, what do you think about this sketch?
Yeah,
Like,
like,
They
they're like,
went
"All
with
right,
it.
We know he's crazy. Come back.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
bad it's good. That
Yep,
works.
Yep.
Yeah. But I want to come back to the podcast and
Yeah.
talk about my favorite episode. which was like crazy to me.
Yeah.
About the dark web.
Oh yeah.
It's insane. It's mind blowing. Basically, the database is something like 5 times. Was it 5,000 times larger than Google or something?
Yeah,
like that?
So for
what
people
was it,
that don't know
500
the dark
times?
web, please
500
explain
times,
that.
I think?
Yeah, what is the
Basically,
dark
it's
web?
like I'll let you explain it and walk us through it.
Sure,
but
sure.
It's
And,
just
and if I get the
yeah.
numbers, people can listen. Like since I don't have the stats in front of me, but
Sure.
it basically like the thing I remember thinking about is like an iceberg, where it's
Mhm.
like the tip of the iceberg. If the web is the iceberg,
Mhm.
the tip of the iceberg is Google. That's
Mhm.
what we see.
yeah.
The rest of that is the deep web is what they
Deep
call
web,
it. The
okay.
deep web. Well, the dark web is correct though. The dark
Mm.
web is part of like the deep web.
Sure.
But the deep web is like like 500 times more info than what we see on Google or whatever. But it's
Jeez.
just not
insane.
indexed.
Yeah.
But most of it is boring. Most of it is like banking
yeah.
stuff, data, banking data, and customer data and stuff like that. Stuff that you wouldn't want to be able to Google or punch in an IP address and
Yeah.
actually access. But it has to exist somewhere for banks to be able to communicate with each other. So
Mhm.
it's that
Gotcha.
type of data.
Database, okay.
Yeah, database type stuff. But then there is within that there is the dark web, which is more like websites that do have addresses and things that you have to use this one special router to access. But it's websites that don't want to be accessed by a search engine.
Mhm,
Like you just
mhm.
can't find it through normal means.
Yeah.
So you have to use this thing called the onion router, and the onion router is totally legal to do. I found all this out. It's called Tor, which just stands for the onion router.
Okay.
Mhm.
And you download it, and Tor is like Google, but it's for the dark web.
Mm.
Yeah.
So you download this search engine, you put it, and the way Tor works though is where Google somebody has their website, and their website is linked to a server. And then your computer wants to access that website, so your computer has to do a straight line to that server
Sure.
to go to that address to access that data.
Mhm.
It's very direct, and because it's very direct, the FBI or whoever or any kind of like ad company that
Mhm.
wants to know you, they can see your history. They know where your computer's been, like for sure.
Mhm.
And that's like to use, like in a dark way, like when somebody gets arrested on like child porn or whatever like that, they're like, no, you did it because
Mhm.
here's the ding, 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 ding showing up
Yeah.
to your IP. No one else could have done it. Well, with Tor, how it works is
Just like bounces.
it bounces
a
it
bunch of
all
different
over the
ones.
place.
Mhm.
Anybody who's on Tor, anybody who's also using it, your IP gets like the circuitous kind of like routed all through their computers in this crazy algorithm
Mm.
that ends up at the server like eventually. But the way that they do it, and I don't know the technical aspects, it masks any way for somebody to trace where your computer is.
Mhm.
So you get like true anonymity. And then they double the anonymity by you don't make purchases for things on the dark web with like a standard account. You do it with
Like
Bitcoin.
Bitcoins and yeah.
Yep, and with Bitcoin, so the way it works is, like you can have like a real money account, and you can go to a Bitcoin lender, I guess, and buy the equivalent amount of Bitcoins. And then now, once you use that Bitcoins, you can use those to buy whatever you want, and it's
Mhm.
completely it's
And it's
encrypted
nuts.
currency.
It's like
Mhm.
there's like prostitution, the child pornography, there's drugs. You can hire
Everything.
hitmen.
Yep.
It's insane.
So basically, it's a private dark underworld of you being able to do whatever you want
Yeah.
in an anonymous way.
Yeah,
Yeah.
It's just taken crime and vice, and it's like the Amazon of crime and vice, where it's like they figured out how to put it online.
Okay.
Because then you buy whatever you want, illegal stuff, with your Bitcoin, or let's say you're selling illegal stuff.
Mhm.
Well, then when you make your transaction, when you convert Bitcoin back into cash, it doesn't show like
Yeah,
what the
where it
Bitcoin
came from.
Came from
It
exactly.
just anonymous, and then
It's like washing off the money.
yeah.
Yeah, it is.
And so basically, what
Right.
you can do though, like let's say you wanted, and then to also make it like more, your chances of getting caught are lower. Let's say you want to get some drugs or whatever. You want to buy, have something sent to your house that's illegal. Well, you make this anonymous transaction. You send it to your address, but you don't send it to your name. And so a package will show up from an anonymous service
Mhm.
Without your name.
sent without your name, there's no transaction history on your end to prove that you paid for it.
Right.
So in theory, if the post office or whatever intercepted it and was like, what the fuck? You're like, I don't know what that is.
Yeah.
I didn't buy that.
Yeah.
And if they dig deep enough, they literally can't find there's no evidence.
Mhm.
And I found out this really works where right after I did that episode, I was getting like the first new tattoo I'd done for. I've been wanting to do all these like crazy designs for like new tattoos, but I haven't had the time to like
Sure.
map it out. So I got like this simple one, just this Idaho thing,
Yeah.
which I thought was like, it's like even if I move, it was always like part of my home and
Sure.
stuff. And so I'm sitting there talking to this new tattoo guy, telling him about the podcast, about the dark web. He tells me, like, he verified it. He's like, oh, that shit's real. And he tells me the story where he had been into meth earlier in his life, like 5 years ago. He's still a pretty young dude, and he said he lived with some roommate who actually dealt it. And he says that they went on the dark web. They purchased 10 pounds
That's fucking nuts.
of methamphetamine.
Mine than drugs would do that, I guess.
Yeah. Had it shipped to their apartment.
Right.
A box shows up with 10 pounds of meth.
That's
FedEx.
crazy.
FedEx 10 pounds.
FedEx, yeah,
That's
and
nuts.
yeah, and then he said that like he used it, so he knew it was real. He said it was like really high quality, whatever for that stuff, and then they cut it up and they sold it. So like the postman or whatever, the FedEx man just was their drug dealer. Like it's just it's insane.
Cash take notes.
Mental.
But
It's all
like
here.
but I was worried. It's interesting. So when you're on the dark web, what I learned, it's not illegal to look at like a fake ID or a fake passport. It's illegal to buy that stuff, but you can. It is illegal, obviously, if you come across what I was worried about when I was doing the research. Is you're just I would go to like a Reddit kind of like site and find like people who had addresses for dark web stores. Then I would take that IP address.
Okay, check
It's
it
not
out.
IP. I don't know if it's IP, but it's like an onion address.
Sure.
And I would like copy and paste that into my onion router and then go to that store. Is how I would find these places. But then there's all these. It's like an old school web kind of site looking, and there's just all these weird, almost like a Craigslist. Just like links and stuff. I was constantly worried that I would just click on one
On the wrong one.
and it would just be like a kid's butthole.
Oh,
I was
yeah.
like, no, because
Oh,
that's
yeah.
illegal.
Imagine
That
you
is
came
illegal.
up with the episode just to justify doing that dark stuff.
Exactly.
so
That's
funny.
why I did it.
Let's do some research.
That'd be a genius
Yeah.
idea.
Yeah, but I mean, but then and then you read about stories where just like the darkest thing I read about the dark web. Do you ever see a movie called Hostel? That Eli Roth.
I did.
That movie bothered me when I saw it.
It
Like,
is. It's
Yeah,
disturbing.
it's
very
disturbing.
disturbing.
Yeah.
Very
You seen
disturbing.
it?
Big time.
Oh.
Oh
It's
yeah,
very
okay.
disturbing.
So
Yeah.
the premise of this movie, really quick, is basically that there's these backpackers, these Americans backpacking in like Eastern Europe,
Okay.
and there's these like Eastern European dudes who have this horrible business where they have like this old building that they kidnap tourists, they take them there, and then businessmen from around the world
They buy 'em.
pay to do whatever they want to a human being.
Like,
And it's like, then they show up
Fucked
with
up
fucked
shit.
up stuff.
Really
like, like
crazy.
blowtorch somebody's eye out,
Yeah, yeah,
and then like,
Yeah, I
oh,
don't like that.
The
stuff.
drill,
I
the drill.
don't even like
scene.
hearing
Oh
about that
yeah,
stuff.
It's
anyway.
so rough to watch.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Eli, the way
Terrible.
they did that movie, they showed a lot.
yeah.
And well,
They did it well.
but yeah, basically, like there's these things, according to legend or whatever like that, and I'm not even about to ever search for one of these.
Yeah.
But called like red rooms, which are essentially those. It's like somebody in the Philippines or somewhere has a thing. They kidnap somebody. They put this ad out. They do a bidding to see who gets to like do whatever to this person, and then they have webcams set up in the room, and then you could be in Denmark or whatever,
Shut the fuck up.
and you could direct a snuff film from like across the world and be like, I want you to cut their arm off.
Do they take Visa?
That's
No.
But I mean,
That's fucking
sadly, I
crazy,
believe that there's probably that kind of evil out there
Oh, yeah.
somewhere. You
Yeah.
know, and it's just.
Yeah.
But they found horrific child porn, rings that they busted to the dark web. There was one video that apparently was very real. It was called, I can't remember the name. It was so horrible, but it was a baby that they would just let people pay to do, like they would do bad things to the baby. It's fucking like a 6-month-old.
I want us to stop talking about this.
I know, too dark,
I
too
know,
dark,
it's
too
really
dark,
dark.
too dark.
That's what's
Go
called the
there.
dark web.
Yeah,
but
that's why it's
do
called the
this.
dark web. Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
but it's
Evil,
essentially,
evil.
is it?
But if you're into that, Timesuck podcast with Dan Cummins.
If you're into that, I get the weirdest fans all of a sudden. Just the worst people on earth.
Yeah. Tell us more about the dark web, Dan.
Right.
But is it illegal to use the dark web,
No,
or it's
no.
not?
No,
Okay,
but it made me so nervous
Yeah.
that I ended up like when I finished the episode, I removed the router and everything because it just makes me
Yeah.
nervous. But like everything I researched. Because not just bad people use it, like they gave good uses too. Like for example, I was doing like this North Korea episode where North Korea, you're not allowed to use the web as a regular
Yeah.
citizen. You're not allowed to do that. You're not allowed to communicate with people in the outside world. Well, certain journalists have been able to contact people in North Korea anonymously from using the dark web, so there's less chance that they'll get caught and get in trouble.
Yeah.
And have something
Yeah.
traced to them, and that way they can kind of get information, and there's less risk to the person there. And also journalists have
So
shared
there are
information.
people in North Korea that are using the dark web to communicate with the outside
a
world.
little- I mean,
Is
it's
it
still
real?
probably
It's
legal.
very, I
Yeah.
mean, you mentioned on the podcast, which I thought, like, I was
Yeah.
thinking, as I was thinking, can it be used for anything good? And then you
Yeah.
started talking about how even in Syria and
Yep,
basically
exactly. Syria's another
journalists, when they
place.
want to get
Imagine the
It-
fear of using it while you're there, though.
no, that's the thing. Like that's
Yeah,
why they
yeah.
use it. They basically when they want to give inside information
Right.
without having the
Yep.
fear of getting caught and fucked by the government.
Yep.
they talk to journalists through that, so they can't be
Yeah.
traced back, and they never find out.
Yeah,
what
But
they
still,
are.
there's
So-
the back of your
yeah.
head. Like, what if I get caught?
Of course.
Yeah, Syria
Yeah.
was a good example because, like, in Syria, like, you know, it's not like the internet is just illegal in the whole country. So it's like you could have a computer,
Mhm.
that's not illegal. You could be on the web, but if you're, you know, sharing, you know, political information, you don't want to be doing that on Google.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
you don't want to be doing that where it's like they could kill you if they catch you. So if you have the Onion router,
Mhm.
you could share that stuff. Remove the router. There's no way.
I can
There's
imagine
no way they can
how
find it.
much fear that puts in
can't
different
imagine.
government, in any government.
Government, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, well
Yeah.
that's why that was another thing. People wanted to outlaw the Onion router, and like there was, you know, a movement for that even in the States where it's like they don't want it to be untraceable, but freedom advocates, like more libertarian type people, were saying like no. He's like that we need something that the government can't supervise.
Because Russia and China are already trying to filter it. And
Yeah.
Trump was kind of
I
hinting.
know.
I think he was testing the waters.
Yeah,
Like,
absolutely.
maybe we should.
No, that's, I mean, I'm definitely libertarian that way for freedom advocate, where it's like, yes, those things can be used for evil, but also if you give the government too much control, it's like, well, then
Yeah.
that's how we start moving to 1984 and
Yeah.
Yeah.
the thought
Anything can be
police.
used.
How
for
much
bad.
time do we got, Kev?
Hour 30.
Okay, so we're already exceeding the limit.
Okay, yeah,
Let's bring it back, huh?
Yeah. I think I have one final question.
Bring it
Just,
back. What does that even mean,
slipped-
bring it back?
Slipped my mind.
Let's bring it back.
Look back at it.
Oh, I wanted to touch on is it Russ Albrecht?
Russ Albrecht, yeah.
Yeah. He was basically like a pirate. He kind of he was doing a bunch of fucked up shit. Basically, he owns the Silk Road, which was the
He was the guy
marketplace
who-
that
yeah.
they sold drugs and everything on.
Mhm.
But when they caught him,
Yeah.
they were kind of talking about it at the Improv the other night. How they made an example out of him.
Yeah.
They really
Oh,
hit the
yeah.
guy hard to like to let
Kind of like the
people
Kim
know,
guy,
yeah.
huh?
Yeah, like Kim.com. Poor guy.
Kim.com.
I feel bad for that guy.
He was such a nice guy too.
Yeah. But
Well, they did. I mean, and actually, the lead investigator who helped convict Ross Ulbricht of doing all these things, he actually ended up going to prison himself for did a bunch of shady things during the investigation, like some kind of extortion type stuff.
Wow.
And I mean, the government. I feel like there was a lot of in tech magazines and stuff, a lot of speculation that the government did illegal things to break that case.
Yeah.
And that the case should have been thrown out. Not that what he did was good, but
I mean,
it'd be
the
a whole other
punishment
pod-
has to fit the crime, I guess, and that type of thing.
Yeah.
But I mean, maybe it did. I mean, I don't know.
It's a tough thing because there's a weird argument for not to like. This could be a whole other podcast, but like, you know, basically his rationale was crime is going to happen anyway.
Yeah.
But if you do it online, if you kind of sanitize it in a certain way, let's take drugs for example, and you let people just buy their drugs online, what that does is that eliminates people having to access a drug dealer that might be somebody who doesn't have the best moral code, somebody who may hurt them physically during the drug deal. It also eliminates turf wars, where if like, you know, if there's this gang running this block and there's this gang running this part of town and they're killing each other to control the whole drug trade, if you take that whole game away from them and just put it online, how many less people would be hurt, you know? And also the DEA's bullshit war on drugs, which is just, it's no more. You can't. It drives me fucking crazy. I mean, again, we could do a whole podcast. Whenever you try to have a war on an ideal, the war on terrorism, the war on drugs, it's like shut the fuck up. You can't fight a word. You can't fight a concept like that. It's like it doesn't make people are going to do drugs. There's going to be just you know, like all you're doing is creating, you know, putting more people in prison, bigger tax burden.
What's a business, man? That's what it is.
Yeah,
It's a business.
it's exactly.
It's
I
a
mean,
business.
yeah.
Truly a business now that they privatized a lot of the prisons and stuff. But it's like, but again, there was speculation from these people that, you know, it's kind of like how the alcohol industry made marijuana illegal, you know, way back in the day.
That's a crazy story.
It's like the prison and pharmaceutical industry, they don't want drugs to be legalized, you know, they don't want the competition, they don't want it to be on the web, you know, it's like a lot of people are going to lose jobs.
Exactly.
So,
And Portugal, I mean, is a perfect example of that. Ever since they legalized all drugs in Portugal.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. Completely, even heroin, everything's legal.
Okay.
And so basically, then they taxed it somehow. Again, I'm not
Sure.
I forgot. I read it a while ago. But basically, they're using the money instead of the money they were using to fight the drugs and all the so much money, right? That law enforcement they're using for education.
Wow.
And it's had amazing results. Like so much less crime, less addiction. People don't have that feeling, oh, it's illegal, I'm going to try to go towards it. You know what I mean? So, I mean, yeah.
Man, I just put Portugal on my travel list.
Yeah.
That sounds
Timesuck.
awesome. That's how, for
Timesuck
real.
episode,
For real,
for sure. All right.
Good shit, man. Well, Dan,
Thank you guys.
thank you so much for
Yeah,
coming,
totally.
brother. And you're so kind and nice and good energy, man.
And sorry so much about. I feel like I should call myself out. I
No,
was
you
such
really
an
fucked
idiot.
us in that
I
regard.
was such an idiot. I've been so.
Well, we're just desperate. We'll take it for the time being.
No, I like was so coordinating so many different things this last month. It was like a little overwhelmed with some podcast stuff, some stand-up stuff, family stuff.
Yeah.
And I just was not clearly looking at the calendar. So
Yeah.
we were supposed to like a couple. I'm so sorry. I'll
Oh,
be sorry
no.
forever about messing up the dates.
Don't be.
Just-
don't be.
Yeah.
Come back next time you're
Yeah,
in
for sure.
Orange County.
Yeah.
man.
For sure,
Is
man.
Dan
Thank you guys.
Cummins coming?
Yeah. Thank you
Not
guys.
Cummins. But,
Yeah, but if there's anything you want to put out, Timesuck podcast, find that on iTunes.
Yeah. Just Timesuck Podcast. You know, you can go to timesuckpodcast.com. And
Okay.
then it's on Google Play,
Mhm.
Stitcher, iTunes, all that stuff.
All
Awesome.
his future shows are on his website,
Yep.
dancummins.tv.
Yeah, and you can even link to that from the podcast as well. So if people just go to
Okay.
timesuckpodcast.com, they can link to the tour page from there.
And then the
Awesome.
Instagram
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
everything of that.
Everything links,
Brother.
yeah.
yeah.
Thanks again,
Thanks
my
so
brother.
much for
Thank
coming.
you, guys.
Great to have you. And we'll see you next time.
All right, yeah.
Ding,
Cool.
ding.
All right,
But,
everybody.
subscribe.
Thanks for tuning in. Make sure to subscribe to our channel for updates and new episodes. And what is it?
Is it subscribe or
Subscribe.
Subscribe.
Subscribe. That's like future
There's a B.
success. Suffering from success. All right, man. Great to have you guys.
Hey, no matter.
Bye.
Good night.
All right.